Please take your seats. The meeting is about to begin. Please stand by. We are going on air in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon and welcome to the July 9th Land Use and Sustainability Committee meeting. Thank you to my colleagues who are here. And for those of you tuning in wondering why I am sitting here and not Chair Fernandez, he will take over momentarily. But we're going to take this opportunity to do a proclamation for Joe Gomez, our Public Works Director, who is leaving. So there's a lot of information in this proclamation, and I'm actually not going to read it. And this is probably a cue. If I don't read from a proclamation, it means I'm going to speak from the heart because I know enough about you and work closely enough with you to speak from the heart. When did you join?
3 years ago.
It seems much longer. You've been
Feels
such
like a decade, sir.
You have been, yeah. You've been so instrumental and so pivotal in our city. And you know what's interesting that this proclamation follows, and I know it's a coincidence, but we just had a meeting discussing our next city manager and the whole process. And really one of the most important things our city manager does, and there's many important things, is finding good talent and bringing people in. And sometimes it's growing from within and coming up through the ranks, or in your case, a lateral move. And I literally remember when Alina Hudak, and I'll give Alina the credit, obviously, for bringing you in and identifying. But I remember when she called me and she's like, I got this fantastic candidate and I'm just nervous, like we're not going to be able to close the deal. We got to get this done. And it lived up to the billing, and you have as well. And I guess the one thing that it says in here, you were born in Cuba, which is great. And you've been living in South Florida since 1961.
Yes, sir.
You seem younger than these numbers here. But no, but really, truly a pleasure. It's a big loss. I am actually very saddened that you're leaving, and it's probably too late that we're giving you proclamations. But if there's anything we could do collectively to change your mind, I would do that. So obviously, I want to give you the opportunity to speak. Maybe even Raquel Williams, our interim city manager, if you want to say something as well. But before we do that, let's actually read the last line of this proclamation. Now, therefore, do we, as mayor and the commissioners of the city of Miami Beach, hereby proclaim July 9th, 2024 as Joe Gomez Day. Do you want to say something, or let your boss say something first?
Okay, I got to catch my breath.
You can. Sure.
Before our wonderful interim city manager steps up to the plate, because she's a tough act to follow, if I could just say a couple words. Joe, you know how I feel about you. Huge fan. Joe has been incredibly patient with my incredibly stupid questions about things that he's had to explain time and time again, long before I even had a twinkling in my eye about running for office. I am very sorry, Joe, that I did not think ahead to bring what we should have brought for you today, which is a greatest hits reel of your first street meetings. But we still have a land use committee meeting, and we didn't have time to do both. I wish you Godspeed. The door is always open here. I think we all share the mayor's sentiments that had there been anything we could have done to change your mind to keep you here, we would have, but I know it's a great opportunity, and don't lose our number. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Please.
Afternoon. So it was mentioned that one Hudak brought Joe here, and I got a feeling another Hudak helped him leave. I just gotta say that Joe has been a tremendous rock in our senior management team. Joe, he is selfless, he has much integrity, he leads by example, he's patient, and he's a professional in every sense. Joe, we are going to miss you and the talent and leadership that you've brought to our team, to the Public Works Department. We know that your legacy will live on because of all of the tremendous things you've done for our city. I'm glad that you're able to leave with certain projects back on track. And we are very proud of you. So wherever you go, you'll always have a home in Miami Beach. And as was mentioned earlier, if there's anything we need to do to keep you here, the door is always open.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Manager. Thank you.
And I don't know if Eric wants to say something as well.
I was so surprised, I didn't even know we were doing this proclamation, so great secret keeping. I just want to say that Joe has always been the consummate professional, and I've known Joe for probably 20 years at this point. He has been an amazing part of the team here at the City of Miami Beach, and he has always led from the front, but with no thought of himself. It's always been about the city, and we're going to miss you. You're an amazing person and an even better professional.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to personally thank Joe. You are leaving on such a high note from our city. You know, a lot of times us as elected officials, we take pride sponsoring items, helping push agendas, helping advance projects, but we can't do anything without the support of professional staff. The staff to have the expertise, the knowledge, but not just the expertise and the knowledge, but the caring to sit down with the community, to listen to the community, to listen to the residents, to work with them, and to work with us, and to help find good middle grounds to advance pivotal projects forward. And that's why this body carries great success of having been able to restart West Avenue, restart First Street, but it's because we've been able to work with great staff. And I just want to highlight one of the things that it mentions in this proclamation that is worth noting is that you, Joe, you've led the third largest department in our city with over 360 employees and a capital and operating budget of approximately $500 million. And just earlier, we were talking about individuals to lead the future of our city. And there's individuals that haven't even, had that experience, and you've been doing that for us for the past several years. And you leaving is such a great loss to us, to our community, to our residents. But we're so grateful for the work you helped advance that's gonna live for decades and for generations for the future and the resiliency of the city of Miami Beach. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Big shoes to fill. Public Works, sanitation, engineering, operations, green space. Commissioner Dominguez.
Thank you so much, Joe, for the leadership that you provided the Public Works Department, for your patience, for the many rounds of meetings that you took with residents and with me. You always take that phone call, and I really appreciate that. I wish you the very best in your new city, and has already been said, you're always welcome in Miami Beach.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure. When you started here, I wasn't involved in our city government, but I'd also often be sitting in the audience. And so I didn't know you joined as the head of Public Works, and I'd see you come up and say, man, that guy must be a really well-paid lobbyist. I go, he is just dressed way, way too well for a government worker. And so go to Coral Gables looking fresh, looking good. I'm sure you will, but we'll miss you here. So thank you for all you've done.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you so much.
I didn't really appreciate the loss until the flooding that we had on the 11th and 12th and 13th, and when I came into your office, you were so busy dealing with residents, drainage problems, and at that point I realized, we're really losing someone. And it's a shame, because I know at that point you really cared about Miami Beach and its residents. So I wish you the best of luck. Okay, at least coming from me, you're always welcome back.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you. Appreciate it. Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor Dominguez, Honorable Commissioners, Madam City Manager, Deputy City Manager, esteemed colleagues, I'm overwhelmed. It's been an emotional couple of weeks for me as I've started to wind down and took the things out of my office. Met with my engineering team today and some other folks from Public Works. And I think I've said this to you before, that out of my almost 48 years in this profession, the last 3 have been the most rewarding in my professional career. But I attribute that not just to me, but a man is a sum of his parts, and the parts here are many, and they're here in this audience. The amazing men and women of Public Works are beyond words, and leaving them is hard, but I know they're in great hands. And I want to thank you all for your support. I know there were many challenging issues along the way, but thank you for your support. Thank you for supporting our Public Works Department. We're not sexy department. We don't wear fancy uniforms, but we get the job done. And each and every day, they're out there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. I also want to thank my colleagues in the other departments who worked side by side with me. They went through many of my challenges and supported me. They welcomed me with open arms when I came to the city. And I can truly say Miami Beach is my family. I will leave you with what I need you to understand why Miami Beach is so special to me. My late father, Juan Jose, lived on Miami Beach for 13 years at 710 Washington Avenue. Every morning I drive by the place he used to live. Every Sunday I would come, and without exception for all those 13 years, we would go walk from the apartment to Puerto Sagua, have lunch at the counter at the same 2 spots, have a couple of Lowenbrau's or Heinekens, and then we would walk to Ocean Drive, and like 2 proper Cuban gentlemen, we would just talk about life. When I drive every morning, my patrol, I go through Ocean Drive, I think about that time with my dad and how much it means to me. So, yeah, Miami Beach is more than just a place of employment. It's a home, it's a family, and it's got my dad here. So, thank you all very much.
Now that we're all teary-eyed, let's take a picture.
We need people to balance on this side. Yes. All right. Thank you, Joe. I know. You can't leave the meeting. You still have to say bye.
It's nice to see the human side of politics every so often. So thank you again, Joe. And now I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner and Chair of the Land Use Meeting, Commissioner Fernandez.
All right. All right, good afternoon and welcome to the July 9th meeting of the Land Use and Sustainability Committee. Thank you, colleagues, for joining us, and thank you to the members, the City Commission who attended, who are not part of the committee, but it's proper to honor Joe for his service. Mr. Planning Director, are there changes to today's agenda as printed?
There are no changes to the printed agenda, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so without changes, withdrawals, deferrals, is there a motion to approve today's agenda? Is there a motion to approve today's agenda?
I'll make a motion.
It's been moved by Commissioner Bond, second by the chair without opposition. That show the agenda is adopted. Mr. Attorney, if you'd read for the record the virtual participation announcement on the agenda.
Sure. Today's meeting of the Land Use and Sustainability Committee will be conducted in a hybrid format with members of the committee physically present in the commission chambers at Miami Beach City Hall and staff and members of the public appearing either in person or virtually via Zoom. To participate virtually, the public may dial 1-888-475-4499 and enter the webinar ID, which is 8505-9923-037#, or log into the Zoom app and enter the webinar ID, which is 8505-9923-037. Anyone wishing to speak on an item must click the raise hand icon in the Zoom app or dial *9 if they're participating by phone.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. Just for the record, we do have a 4:30 time certain. Those are transportation items that I believe the Florida Department of Transportation and Public Works will be attending. Mr. Director, which are those items?
Mr. Chair, that's item number 12 regarding I-395 MacArthur Causeway, and item number 13, discussion regarding I-195 Juliet Tuttle Causeway.
Okay, great. And just for the record, I want to recognize we have our state representative, Fabian Basabe, in the audience. Thank you, Mr. Representative, for attending. With that, Mr. Director, let's call item number 1.
Okay, Mr. Chair, item one is a request for the administration to explore and provide options for establishing new resiliency best practice parameters to ensure that porous concrete pavers and bioswales are used in new development to help mitigate new normal flooding events.
Is there a motion to bring the item before the table? Second by the chair. Commissioner Bont, this is your item. You're recognized.
Unlike in an earlier conversation where I was not trying to impact or engineering of anything, in this case I am. I'm going to turn it over to the colleagues who actually know a lot about this, but I will tell you, I've lived here 21 years and counting, and as we see our housing stock change, whether it's single-family housing or multifamily housing or apartment buildings, condos being built, and aesthetic preferences change, we are seeing increasing use of concrete pavers taking over green space, whether that is a swale on the street or in the case of the house where I raised my children, the entire front yard, which used to be grassy and we had feral cats that we trapped and spayed and released, is now giant concrete pavers with a little bit of grass in between if the grass can last. I'm not suggesting that we should be telling people they can't use that. I'm suggesting that we have very strict standards of what is permitted so that if we are losing green space, we are replacing it with the best available engineering to make up for it. So whether it's porous pavement or, different kinds of options that I don't even know about, I know a lot of work is being done on this type of product around the world. I see videos and read articles about it all the time that people are trying to do this because it's not a problem that is specific to Miami Beach. And it seems like a small step, but you know what? Those small steps add up. And so between using new technology, letting people understand that it's out there, incentivizing the use of that new technology, and encouraging retaining or expanding green space, I think that's what we should be doing. And now I will shut up.
Okay, with that, is there a presentation from staff? Is there anyone from staff you'd like to recognize? Do you have a proposal before the committee?
Sure, I'd like to have the relevant folks, I don't know if that's going to be Eric or Joe, to talk about what's available and what needs to happen to go forward. But the request would be for us to adopt this and move forward from a legal perspective to make it something that we can, something that is actionable, so that when you are applying to build a new driveway or build a new development or do some new landscaping, it adheres to these best practices and standards using the best available resources that are known to us.
Joe, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Vice Chair, interesting enough, the project you always talk to me about, First Street. On First Street, as an example, for both the Valley Lane and the parking lane on the residential side, we are proposing porous pavement for those areas. Even though it's in the public right-of-way, it has less amount of traffic, so it's more suited for the porous pavement type. Parking lots, as mentioned in the memo, are also a great area to consider porous pavements. They have their limitations, of course, in terms of maintenance and traffic loads. The more loads you have traffic-wise, the more difficult, because the porosity of the pavement starts to go away, and at that point, it just becomes a very rigid surface. But nevertheless, it's something that our engineering team has continued to explore, and we're going to continue to explore new methods that are out there, new technologies, and we certainly, whatever we can get more pervious area to be able to drain, much better.
If I may. So what I'd like to see is, and Tom, maybe this is a question for you and your staff. If somebody comes to us with an application to, we need to replace a driveway or build a driveway, go right ahead, but here are the parameters. Like when people say to us, we want to paint our house, we're like, great, but here are the parameters. And so how do we make that a thing? What's the action that is needed to make that part of our code?
I can address that, Commissioner. As you'll note in the memo, we provided some backup from the applicable sections of the Resiliency Code. And it goes into a lot more detail than just driveways and walkways. But to that point, we have a couple of different requirements that are specific to parking lots. They must consist of a high albedo surface which is a durable material that's meant to minimize the impacts of heat, or porous pavement, and we define both of those. The other thing that's important to point out is that within single-family districts, there's a 50% landscape open requirement within front yards and side yards facing a street, as well as a minimum requirement of 70% open space in rear yards. And so what we're finding with new single-family construction is with these higher numbers, you're seeing significantly more landscaping and the pavement has been more minimized. We are seeing a mix of both concrete and paver set and sand, but with these high minimum open space requirements, we're finding, and with homes that are building an understory that allows for even better water retention and keeping the water away from the habitable areas of the floor of the home, that also allows for parking underneath the building, which again increases the pervious open space area that is within the required yard.
So if I may, the item before us was for the administration to explore and provide options for establishing new best practices to ensure that porous concrete and pavers and bioswales are used in new developments. Does the administration at this time have a recommendation for the body as it relates to the intent that the sponsor has brought before us? I'm asking the administration.
Not beyond what we've listed in the memo in terms of what the existing requirements are. We didn't develop any new recommendations pursuant to that. To the extent that the committee wants to continue this to the September meeting, we could come back with some recommendations that would be based on the parameters that are set.
Commissioner Bond.
So it's not, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's not just new developments, it's existing structures that are upgrading. I think we need to do everything in our power to make this more enticing, make it, I'm sorry, to do everything we can as a city to protect our infrastructure, our roadways, our residents' homes, by requiring they go an extra step, whatever that extra step is. And I know that the short-term pain is, well, it's a little more expensive, or I wanted to have my 5th car in front of my house. Now I'm gonna have to find another parking spot for my 5th car, whatever the issue is. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many nice cars you have in front of your spot if they're floating away in what is increasingly becoming the new normal. And I don't wanna sound like Chicken Little, but the fact that we've had 3, I think, 100-year storms in the last 18 months is not an anomaly. Those are not anomalies. That's what this is going to be looking like. And so let's take a very hard look at what we can do to make this stronger, more exigent, more demanding, so that we can all enjoy this barrier island for the next 100 years instead of getting washed out to sea.
Commissioner Bond, I would support any effort that you have to bring in more porous surfaces to help mitigate flood events that we're dealing with. I want to understand bioswales, because my understanding of bioswales is that they're good because they help with the water quality.
Correct.
But they don't necessarily, it's not that they necessarily help with mitigate flooding, but they help with water quality.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. So a bioswale is really to treat that first flush that comes from a rainstorm. It's for water quality purposes. Right. It's not volumetric.
And so with porous concrete and with pavers and that type of technology, is the maintenance different than with bioswales?
For typically porous pavements, obviously street sweeping is an important component of it, right, to make sure that the surface area is free of debris and oils that could do that. The parking lanes are great areas because they don't have the constant traffic. You know, cars come in, they park, and then they'll roll out, and sometimes you'll have, but in roadways, it's a little more complicated because, again, the impact of the traffic, the loads of the traffic, just aren't really suited for the type of technology that we have today. There are new methods that are being looked at, and I'm sure that at some point in the very near future, there will be porous pavements that are more suitable to high volume traffic. But right now, I think staying the course with parking lanes, parking lots, driveways, and things like that, I think would be a substantial help.
Okay, so I want to support the efforts of my colleague. The only thing I want to be mindful of is the potential maintenance burden that we place on private property owners with the use of technology that's used in bioswales. I just want to be mindful of that because that could be, quite onerous on a property owner. I think, from my research, it includes, sediment removal, is a greater level of management of vegetation, it's a greater monitoring of clogging and erosion. So it's the type of stuff I want us to be mindful of because I don't want to put too much of a burden on, homeowners, private property owners, but I do want us to certainly look into the technology that we could use as it relates to porous surfaces besides bioswales. So if we could find that balance so that we don't place on owners, on private property owners as it relates to maintenance.
So through the chair, if I may, so Joe and I went back and forth, like, Commissioner, a bioswale is not about volume of water. I'm like, I know, Joe, I actually listen when you talk. He's like, are you sure you understand this? I'm like, yes, I got it. My thought was, and I think actually, Nick, you jumped onto that one as well. My thought on this was, since we're talking about how to incentivize better practices going forward, they are not paired necessarily, but if somebody is putting in a request to do something to a home or to build a new structure, there is one set of parameters for porous concrete and whatever new technology comes, and there's another set of parameters for bioswales or whatever the right green space water management tool is available to us. And if it's not literally technically a bioswale, but it's something else, and it is not to necessarily contain the water, but I understand that, but we're doing this kind of little bites at the apple, and so these were 2 bites that I thought we could package together, even though they
Thank you.
function differently.
Commissioner Suarez.
Thank you, Chairman. I love this idea, and I think, one of my big issues is water quality getting into the bay, and the more we can put that forward to really cleanse that first flush, I think that's going to go a long way to prevent any more fish kills that we've actually just saw a couple weeks ago because of the flooding. So, one of the things that Miami Beach should be a leader in is environmentalism, right? It's no surprise that the state of Florida passed a balloon ban not too long ago after we were the first city to do that. And I truly believe that it's because of this body that made news, that across the country. I mean, we even had a lobbyist come from Party City to lobby against it, which was ridiculous. But and it passed, and lo and behold, now the state of Florida took the lead on this. And so, little things like this actually transcend beyond Miami Beach into other municipalities and Dade and hopefully all over the state of Florida, where we can be the leader in really taking care of our environment. So if this is going to help, I think that's a great step.
So you second Commissioner Bott's motion to have staff work on an item?
Yes.
To bring back, how much time does staff need to bring this back to the body?
We can bring something back on September 4th.
In September. And I just, I want to commend Commissioner Bond's leadership because anything that we can do to collect polluted stormwater runoff, soak it into the ground and filter out that pollution, I think as you mentioned, Commissioner Suarez, is something that we've been endeavoring on. When you look at our blue-green stormwater management infrastructure concept plan, 40% of Miami Beach is covered by impervious surfaces, and before us is an opportunity to work on enhancing those pervious surfaces, helping with our flooding, but also helping with filtration and the quality of our water. So, so with that, I think by acclamation, we can continue this item to September so the staff can work on a proposal. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Don't go too far away because let's call up item number 2 and 3.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'll read item 2 and 3 into the record. Item 2 is a review of Invest 90L and an assessment of the impacts to ongoing infrastructure projects, including potentially reprioritizing projects. Item number 3 is to review Invest 90L and assess the impacts to Palm Island, Hibiscus Island, Sunset Harbor, Sunset Islands, and Indian Creek areas as part of the first phase of the neighborhood improvement plans.
Thank you, Mr. Director. And the reason why I've placed this item on the agenda, and I want to thank Commissioner Bott, who joins me as a co-sponsor. You know, during this multi-day intense rainfall event, we experienced significant flooding in certain areas of our city on local roadways and on properties, you know, not just in Miami Beach, quite frankly, it was throughout Miami-Dade County. But it is estimated that we had certain areas of our city experienced over 22 inches of rain during the span of those 2 days. And I think based on the information that's been shared with me in South Beach, we got 44 calls for flood service, Mid Beach 129, and in North Beach 77. And the areas that were most significantly impacted by the rainfall were mainly those areas that are low-lying in our city. Areas like Lagos, areas like Lakeviews, other areas such as the upper areas in North Beach, in Dickens, and in the 80s. Those are the areas that primarily have the gravity drainage systems with outfalls and no stormwater pumps. And I see we have Joe Gomez with us, our outgoing Public Works Director. I want to recognize Joe to walk us through how those areas that we've improved, how we've improved through the first phase of the neighborhood improvement plans, how they fared out, and those areas that were most affected during Invest 90L, those areas that were most affected with high levels of flooding. What are the plans for those areas? So Joe, welcome, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So to your first point, the areas we did obviously in the middle of taking care of all the flooding throughout the city. We also conducted several patrols during and post the Invest 90L. What we found is that areas such as Sunset Harbor, the Indian Creek project, the Indian Creek Drive project that was completed a couple years ago, Palm Hibiscus, those areas fared very well in comparison to other areas of the city that have no that have no infrastructure improvement projects. I can tell you that I was out for those from June the 11th to the 13th. I was out in the city most of the time, and it was incredible and very rewarding to see that those projects that have had infrastructure improvements work as intended. So I think the moral of the story is that the resiliency projects, the stormwater improvement projects do work. They definitely provided our residents a level of relief. Now to your next question, Mr. Chair, in terms of what plans do we have for those areas most affected? So I think it would be important, PJ, if you could you put up the heat map? So this map is a representation of the service calls that we got from June the 11th through the 13th. The color, obviously from light blue to red, indicates the severity of the flooding. As you can see, the areas that were most affected, you'll see the yellow, and then the yellow and the red is the North Bay Road, the area connecting North Bay Road to Alton Road. As we all know, most of North Bay Road, north of 47th Street, was severely affected. That's just where the service call was located. So the colors indicate, again, service calls. Again, as the chair mentioned, we had, in totality, we had over close to 300 service calls overall in the city. But the majority of the calls were in the Mid-Beach area, and specifically, if you look at the concentration, again, of the flooding, and it was associated with the most vulnerable and low-lying areas, which are the North Bay Road area.
Let me ask you this, Joe. When we look at this map, the areas that are red, does that mean is that there were more calls, or was it that there were extremely high levels of flooding?
There were service calls, but also the intensity of the flooding. So it's the degree of flooding. So, for example, the red indicates anything more than 12 inches, so, which we consider a severe flooding. That's a foot of water standing. And then I can tell you, in the case of 59th Street and Alton Road, I had water up to my knees at 3 o'clock in the morning on the evening of June 11th to the 12th.
So red is extremely high, and yellow indicates?
It's a little less severe, but still, it's 6 to 12 inches. The blue then goes from 3 to 6, and then 0 to 3 inches.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Suarez.
Thank you for recognizing me. Yeah, it just, how come South of Fifth didn't have any?
Well,
There's not a dot there.
That's correct, and that's a great observation, Commissioner. The reason for that is we have documentation that there was extensive flooding. We have videos, and we actually drove through the area. But if people don't call the service call in, it's not recorded as a service call.
Right, so Commissioner Fernandez asked, is that chart based on inches of rain, or is it based on flooding? Or is it based on calls, or both?
It's both. So that heat map has all the service calls that were documented during that 2-day period, and then the service call that has next to it the depth of flooding, 3 to 6, 6 to 12, 12 or more, and that indicates the severity of flooding.
So I guess to Commissioner Suarez's point, there may have been flooding in the city,
Oh,
but perhaps
absolutely.
it's not shown in this map because there was not a call for service.
Correct. So we in the south of Fifth neighborhood, for example, you don't typically get as many calls. Again, it's more you have multifamily. You have high apartment buildings and things like that. So if you're on the 6th floor of an apartment building, you may not, you may see the flooding, but you may not call. Whereas if you live in a single-family home or in a 2-story, you're going to be more affected by that flooding. So you're definitely bound to call it in.
Are there other areas in our city that you are aware of that may have experienced flooding, or a certain level of high or extremely high levels of flooding that are not reflected in this map?
I know that the Flamingo area, for example, can we go back to that map, PJ? Did I do something? There we go. There. Oh, it's not. There we go.
There we go.
So in the Flamingo area, I think you can see that there are dots there that indicate there was a degree of flooding. You'll see a couple of spots in yellow and so forth. But that area, but the one area that we know for sure that we had extensive flooding, but we didn't get service calls, is the south of Fifth. And we have, again, documentation from our own folks taking video and driving through it. I drove it through there myself,
Right.
other members of the team.
Okay, so let me, and in South of Fifth, we already have a project that's underway, that's been approved by the
Yes.
city commission, that's moving forward.
Yes.
So as it relates to the purpose of this discussion of identifying areas that were most severely affected by the flooding, and where we are in terms of advancing improvements for those areas, South of Fifth is already programmed
Right.
with a neighborhood improvement project
Right.
for that area. The area that is most bold in red here is a low-lying area of Lagos A and Lagos C. My understanding is that you have a critical needs, two separate critical needs projects for approved in that area?
Yes, sir. That's correct. Based on the stormwater master plan that the commission adopted in March of this past year, we identified 20 critical needs projects. The two that you mentioned will begin design in 2025 and go to construction in 2027.
Okay, so those are two areas of our city where we experienced critical flooding.
Yes.
Extremely high levels of flooding according to this map. So there we have a critical needs project that is initiating design next year and should be in construction by 2027.
Correct.
As we look further south, there's that Lagos Lakeview area.
Yes.
That also experienced high levels of flooding. Where are we in design and construction phasing for that area?
In the design for the Lagos, the Lakeview, there's two separate, the Lakeview is a lower ranked priority than the Lagos C, but one of them is scheduled to start design in 2027, construction in 2029, and then the other one, I think, is a year after that.
Okay, so I think Lagos C.
Yes.
Is the first one, and then
Right.
and then Lakeview A. Is there anything that could be done to, because from my understanding with Lakeview A, which it's an area that, again, when you look at the map, experienced high levels of flooding. You know, we're not looking at construction there till now 2032, and that's concerning. In my opinion, is there anything that staff could do? Could you guys go back, look at the planning and see if there's anything that could be done to reprioritize so that perhaps while you're doing Lagos C, which experienced high levels of flooding, perhaps you could do both critical needs projects at the same time? Could that be analyzed and brought back for consideration?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. And I think, remember, the heat map that we showed you just recently, it was a moment in time, essentially 2-day period. Whereas the data that we did for the critical needs, we looked data back over a 2-year period. I think if we went back now and added data from that point in time where we looked at it and added additional data, I think it's clear that these areas are low-lying, and I think the numbers may indicate that Lakeview, for example, could move up from, let's say, number 6 or number 7 to number 3 or number 4.
I think Lakeview is number 15.
Number 15, that,
Right.
exactly.
But from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's temporary pumps
Yes.
that are used in that
Yes.
that area that creates filtration and water quality issues that then also need to be addressed. And I think that project dropped down to number 15 because at the time there may have been residents' concerns.
Correct.
And it wasn't that there wasn't the need for it, but it was resident concerns that dropped it down to
Yes.
the list. I think given the storm and the amount of emails that I have received from residents wanting to see this project reprioritized is overwhelming, and I think it gives us the opportunity to go back and see if you're doing the neighboring neighborhood, it might be the opportunity to do that neighborhood as well. So I would like to encourage Lakeview, the Lakeview area. In town center in North Beach.
Yes.
So in the map, I see that we experienced high levels of flooding there, but my understanding is that we're in design already for town center.
That's correct. Design is fully funded. We have a $10 million grant. It's fully funded. So the team is actively working on that. And if construction funding becomes available, a best case scenario, we could conceivably start construction in the North Beach Town Center area sometime in the latter part of 2026 or 2027.
And how about in North Shore? North Shore, B and C, that's another area. The area up in North Beach and Dickens that I received
Yes.
also a lot of complaints about. It was a river in that area.
Yeah,
And I think
and-
probably a lot of us heard from residents there. Commissioner Bott, I know you live close to that area.
Yeah, I mean, we had in sort of the westernmost parts of Normandy Isle, we had people who had 3 feet of water, and because your team was out there slogging through it. So, as I said in the earlier item, this is not a once in 100 years event. This is our new normal, and we need to really think differently about how we can be more inclusive and get at least short-term measures on our way to long-term fixes to alleviate some of this. And some of the items that are going to be presented later, like unclogging the drains, which seems like a no-brainer, will help, but that's not everything. If, through the
Yes,
chair, if I may.
of course.
I need to apologize to everybody listening. I need to leave unexpectedly. We're not breaking quorum. I've just delegated some stuff to the chair. Hopefully some of you guys can present some of my stuff, and I'll be back. It's not that I don't care. I care very much.
Yes.
And I trust that all of my items are in excellent hands with everybody.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Commissioner Bott. Best of luck. So, Joe, as it relates to North Shore, what is the timeline for North Shore B and C? Which I believe is Project 9.
Just bear with me for a sec. North Beach Town Center is part of North Shore D. So right now, we are working on the design for all of North Shore D.
Okay.
The next one would
B and
be-
C.
Yeah, which includes B and C.
Wonderful. So, okay, so B and C is included with that area there, which is construction 2026.
Correct.
Okay.
No, the B and C. No, B and C, I'm sorry, North Shore D, B and C is number 9 in the critical needs. So we're gonna address that in the critical needs. North Shore D is being addressed as part of the North Beach Town Center design that's currently underway.
Yes.
This may have been missed. Where is North Bay Road on the priority list?
I'm sorry?
Where is North Bay Road?
North Bay Road on the priority list, you're talking about Upper North Bay Road?
Yes,
With
it's
experience.
number 3 and 4 on the critical needs. So design will start next year and construction in 2027.
And how does that dovetail with the FDOT project along Alton?
The FDOT, the earliest that FDOT is going to begin Alton Road is 2028 because of the Protect grant that they received. That's the earliest they're gonna start, but they're gonna start from south to north. So they're gonna start from Michigan to 43rd. So by the time that they get up to segment 3, that would be segment 3, which is from 47th to 63rd, that work will have already been completed.
Yeah, but you don't wanna have both roads under construction at the same time.
Right, but are we gonna be coordinating with FDOT?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we have
Does one
extensive-
project need to happen before the other for FDOT, between FDOT and our resiliency project?
No, the segments 2 and 3 of Alton Road, we have combined drainage with FDOT.
Okay.
That will take portions of that, so we're working with them through that.
Great.
Yes, Commissioner Dominguez, you're recognized.
Oh, thank you. And regarding Upper North Bay Road, I've had multiple meetings with the Public Works Director and his department and the Neighborhood Association and the residents that live there to make sure that they are put as priority as possible.
Yes.
And I've also talked to you about if it can be done sooner, then let's do it.
Yes. Yes, and the thing is, you need to do design. Design takes time.
The design and permitting typically takes 2 years for stormwater projects.
Right, and I believe with Lagos C, which is where that Upper North Bay
Yes.
Road area is, you're at 60%.
Correct.
Design, which is pretty advanced. I'm very concerned, frankly, with Lakeview A, where we experienced so much flooding. Seeing that won't be under construction till 2032 is a long wait. And I think we need to do whatever we can to reprioritize that. I'd like for this committee to entertain a motion back to the city commission where we request the administration to and the chair will second it, asking that there be reprioritization of Lakeview A, so that perhaps it can, take place when we're doing some of the other projects. Mr. Public Works Director, anything else as it relates?
Do we need to vote on that?
I think by acclamation, can we adopt that by acclamation? By acclamation,
Great.
we can show that adopted. Anything else as it relates, what I like about what you've presented to me, it seems that the critical needs projects that we have, which are the short-term remediation projects that we do, but that serve the needs of the long-term neighborhood improvement projects. But these critical need projects, they kind of match the areas of most need in our city, but not just the areas of most need based on a study, but based on the real-life flooding that was most experienced. Those areas and those residents who have reached out to us and have told us that they experienced high and extreme levels of floodings in their homes and in their streets and in their neighborhood, they should be assured and feel comfortable knowing that the critical needs projects that the Public Works Department has in place for the next few years and that are under design and future construction over 2025, 26, 27, 28, are precisely in those areas that experienced the flooding, and hopefully those residents should be experiencing some relief soon. Would that be an accurate statement?
Yes, sir.
Wonderful. Are there any other questions for the Public Works Director as it relates to flooding at these projects? Commissioner Magazine? No. All right. With that, we can close these two items, and with that motion that we sent to the City Commission.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. It's 4:30. I'm going to go ahead and, out of respect to the Florida Department of Transportation, call up Mr. Director. Which was the time certain?
Items 12 and items 13.
Items number 12 and 13. I don't know, we have members of the Florida Department of Transportation present for these items.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, committee members, Jose Gonzalez, Transportation and Mobility Director and Interim Parking Director. So we have representatives from FDOT attending virtually. They should be already online. And I believe Danielle Iglesias will begin the presentation and the updates on these two projects.
All right, let's see, do we have Mr. Iglesias on the line? Oh, we cannot hear you. I believe you're muted. Yep, we're having technical difficulties. We cannot hear you.
Yeah, but his mic is probably not connected. He's looking at it right now.
EJ? All right, Jose, why don't we continue the item? Why don't we call a separate item? You can connect with them and so that we can solve the communication issue with FDOT. With that, Commissioner Bond requested that we continue a number of her items to the July meeting. Items number 8, items number 10, number 14, and number 20. Number 14 is my item, but I don't mind continuing it to the July meeting so that Commissioner Bod can participate in the discussion. Not to July, it would be to September.
8 what? 8, 10?
8, 10, 14, and 20. Is there a motion to continue these 4 items to the September meeting?
8, 14, and 20.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Dominguez, items number 8, 10, 14, and 20, to move them to the September meeting. A second by the chair, by acclamation. Let's show those items continued to the September meeting. With that, Mr. Director, let's call up item number 4.
Okay, Mr. Chair, item number 4 is a discussion regarding a possible ordinance to require property owners to properly dispose of yard trimmings and leaves to avoid clogging of stormwater drains.
Commissioner Suarez, you're welcome to present this item.
I believe this was co-sponsoring Tanya, Commissioner Bott's item. Look, you know, it's pretty clear from the last flooding event that we had on the 11th, 12th, and 13th that a lot of the issues that we've seen with the flooding was simply a drainage problem. And I think I presented at the last commission meeting that most of the flooding happened during low tide. And so it certainly wasn't a sea level rise issue. It was simply a drainage issue. And I've had residents reach out. Everyone here knows that we've had residents reach out, send videos of themselves, their children going into these drains and pulling out leaves and debris so that it could drain. You know, I was out there pulling tarpon off of Alton Road and putting them in Biscayne Bay. And one thing I realized was all the drains were clogged. And as soon as I think it was FDOT trucks that came by and vacuumed all the debris, it worked miraculously. And so I think we've also had a lot of complaints where, you know, you have landscapers that come by and they just blow all the trimmings out onto the street, and that causes a lot of the issues. So, you know, I'd like to see what we can explore here as a committee to perhaps make a code enforcement, or perhaps dovetailing with in certain spots where we know drainage is an issue, perhaps come up with a pilot program that has drainage grates that are designed to accommodate for large tree trimmings, et cetera. So I'd love to hear what my colleagues have to say about that.
I'd love to hear from staff, unless Commissioner Dominguez, you have any comments on the item?
No, I really like the item. I think it's very important, and I too would like to hear staff's recommendation.
Yeah, please.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon. Hernan Cardino for Code Compliance. So we already have legislation on the books regarding tree clippings and yard debris being blown into our stormwater drain. I think we need to do a better focus of enforcement in our neighborhoods. What we have been enforcing of late, and I want to say within the last 12-month period, over 120 violations, is our sediment control, which is things that run into our storm drains also from construction sites primarily. But I think there's room for improvement to do the lawn vegetation that's being blown into our drains. As you know, our neighborhood code officers actually have to witness this violation in order to issue the violation to the vendors, to these landscaping companies.
Joe, I know you're leaving. But what has the city ever explored specialized grates in the draining system to possibly accommodate for something? Maybe set up like a system of filters that are better for drainage. I'm not too familiar with the newest technology on drainage and public works. Maybe you can shed some light on that.
Yes, sir. Thank you, through the chair. Commissioner, we did a pilot project a few years ago on Ocean Drive where we installed special barriers on the inlets on Ocean Drive to see how, and what happened was Ocean Drive hardly ever floods. It has a reasonably good drainage, and it's on the higher side of the beach. And what we found was that the debris just collected in these barriers and would not let the water go through. The challenge with drainage, especially in the residential areas where you have the grate like this, is that the water is flowing this way and it picks up everything as it comes into the grate. And it just, then what happens is it gets lodged in there and it creates a barrier. So instead of getting 100% of the capacity of that grate to take the water, you may be getting 60%, 50% of it. So obviously it's gonna take a lot longer for the water to go through, and again, you gotta clear that.
What about, for example, what about like a float switch, for example, where once it's tripped, it sends a message to staff saying, hey, this drain is clogged. And the staff sends out a truck or a vac truck to service the drain. You know, something, you know, as simple as that could go a long way.
I mean, I think, yeah, in terms of a float switch works as the water rises. So, but I think some sort of, maybe some sort of trigger where it shows that the inlet is not taking the water as much as it should, its capacity. At that point, maybe that's something that with that technology can be explored. I'm sure there's some pilot technology out there that we can probably look at and see if it's possible to do that and try to, in a few hot locations that are constantly subject to that.
Would the chair and the rest of the body be interested in something similar? Maybe we pick 3 or 4 locations similar to that heat map we saw where it was completely red, and putting a float switch of some sort. And look, this would be a great project for staff to come forward and put something. I don't think it'd be very much. I mean, a float switch is pretty cheap. Just maybe the signal to send to staff might.
We have to find a way to be able to determine when that inlet is clogged and not taking water in when it should be taking water in. And I think we just need to look at what's available out there. But I will also say, Commissioner, that I think it's important, you know, and we need our residents to help us too, because what happens is many times they'll just put the lawn, the palm fronds or whatever right there on the swale. What happens is you get that first rain, that'll carry it through, and then it gets clogged. So I think looking at other municipalities, for example, I mean, I live in the city of Miami. The city of Miami, you cannot, all lawn garbage, essentially, all trimmings and everything must be disposed by the gardener or by the resident. You have to dispose of it. You can't put it out there so that it floats away and it clogs inlets. Those who do get violated. And I think we just, this is going to be I think to expect that just technology alone is going to solve it. I think it's a combination of both things, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, you know, unfortunately, we're left with, when there's a storm, you have residents pulling drains out, you know, debris out of the drains. But back to, I guess, the code. Hernan, you know, what would you recommend as far as a code provision where we make it, quote unquote, illegal to leave tree trimmings? I mean, is that right now, is there any sort of law against that?
Commissioner, through the chair. So section 4692 actually defines litter, and it talks about lawn vegetation. And then it talks about 46.224 goes into when these palm fronds and lawn debris gets blown into our storm drains, these violations actually start at $1,000 each.
So you're telling me that there's already laws on the books?
There is, and then there's the third one that I talked to you about that we've been really concentrating on recently, which is a sediment control. And those start at $500.
So through the chair, it seems that we already have laws on the books. I'm willing to explore a very tiny pilot program, maybe 4 or 5 drains, where we set up a system of like a feedback loop where we know that, hey, look, this is flooding really bad. It may not be a float switch, maybe it's just a camera, right? And Public Works can tie into that camera and see, hey, like, hey, look, it's flooding. I like the float switch idea because it definitely tells you that there's a flood going on instead of having to look at a camera and seeing how bad the flood is. Because you can set a tolerance on the float switch. But you know, similar to like the pavers, I think it's just really thinking outside the box on how to solve a problem. And if that works, you know, we can certainly move it to other neighborhoods that have drainage problems with debris and tree trimmings.
So I think one of the key things is making sure that we are enforcing this code.
Mm-hmm.
Come, you know, rainy season, come summer, we need to make sure that we do a thorough inspection of our different areas, especially those most prone to flooding, and making sure that this code is being followed. Are you making a motion for the committee to consider?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion for a very small pilot program. Let's perhaps do 5 locations where we know the flooding has been severely bad and has been affected, and have staff put together a proposal for what that would cost, where would it be, and how it would work. And then we bring it to the commission, or it can come back to the committee.
Let's bring it back to the committee so that Commissioner Bach can be a part of that discussion. I'll second your motion. Perhaps we can bring this back for the September committee. Does that provide everyone with sufficient time for the development of this pilot?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, all right. Commissioner Dominguez, you have any comments?
No.
Commissioner Magazine, any comments? No? Okay, so this item will come back in September. With that, let's go back to our time certain of 4:30 for items number 12 and 13. Jose, if you want to come back to the podium to discuss the issue of the exit lane at the MacArthur Causeway and to discuss the Julia Tuttle Causeway.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So for item 12,
Yes.
Jean with FDOT is on the line.
Wonderful. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chairman Fernandez, and good afternoon, Commissioners. My
Welcome.
name is Gene Borsico. I am a project manager for the FDOT on the I-95 Signature Bridge project. I'm going to be presenting on behalf of the department. Trying to share my screen.
Thank you. And the reason why we've invited you to join us today, and we appreciate that you're here, is to speak specifically as it relates to the exit of the MacArthur Causeway to Biscayne Boulevard, and what could be done as part of the projects that FDOT has underway to facilitate an exit lane for the westbound traffic onto Biscayne Boulevard. Right now, our residents and residents from other parts of Miami-Dade County are experiencing high levels of congestion when heading westbound on the MacArthur Causeway. And part of it is caused by the limited capacity that there is heading off onto Biscayne Boulevard. Does FDOT have any plans to provide perhaps an extra lane of traffic heading off the MacArthur Causeway onto Biscayne Boulevard?
So I have put together a presentation as to, and it touches upon the temporary condition that we have in this area related to our construction. But it also touches upon the permanent condition, and perhaps this will help you guys understand what it's there now and what we're planning to do in this area in the future, and what we're gonna do in the interim.
Okay,
Are you guys able to see
how
the
much time do you need
presentation?
for your presentation, sir?
About 10 minutes.
Is there a way that you could do the presentation in 5 minutes?
So there's, as part of this presentation, there's a video that's 5 minutes that touches upon the many benefits of the project, and it actually highlights what we're doing as part of this project, which is we're creating direct access to the community on the beach and the community at Watson Island. I mean, I could go over it instead of presenting this. I could go straight into my presentation for the round.
Sure. If you could specifically address the issues, we're very familiar with the Signature Bridge project. This item is very narrowly tailored to the issue of the exit. The exit from 395 onto Biscayne Boulevard. And we're so grateful that you're here, and we're so grateful for the work that FDOT is doing and the attention that the district is providing to our city. Unfortunately, we have a very heavy agenda. So I see you've pulled up this slide that speaks specifically on this exit.
Understood. So the existing condition during construction is, there's one lane, from the top of the ramp all the way to, Bayshore Drive. And this is specifically to allow for the reconstruction of the ramp and the construction of the bridges adjacent to it. And so it's important not to compare this existing condition to the permanent and improved condition that we'll have at the end of our construction. So at the end of our construction, we're going to enhance storage and capacity in this area, and we're going to also enhance the flow of traffic. So if you're seeing this illustration that we put together, we're adding additional storage on the ramp beyond. So to the east of Bayshore Drive, we're adding 300 linear feet of additional storage, and this will improve congestion in this area. We're also adding a free flow right turn lane that it's going to cater exclusively to those that are looking to head north on Bayshore Drive, and that's about 20% of the traffic this ramp sees.
Okay.
In addition to that, ahead of this intersection, we're adding a fourth lane, and we're synchronizing the timing for Biscayne Boulevard and North Bayshore Drive. What this means is that when the signal at North Bayshore Drive goes green, the signal at Biscayne will also be green, and this will allow for a continuous flow of traffic.
I want to thank you. I want to thank you for showing this graphic of what the permanent configuration will be, because I believe this right here addresses what is the concern that I have received from residents as it relates to this project and the future of this project. As you see, heading westbound towards the ramp, towards Biscayne Boulevard, it's one lane. But then as you get closer to the traffic light, that one lane expands to 3 lanes and 1 right turn lane. You end up with 4 lanes of traffic. And it's understood why when you experience the traffic that's there, you really need that capacity. My concern is that, you have ultimately, 1 turn lane and 3 lanes of traffic, but the ramp, the exit, is only 1 lane. And what potential do you have, or does the department have at this point in the project to accommodate perhaps an extra lane at that exit? And I don't know if you could go back to that slide where you have, you see where you have some green space there. You're going from 1 lane and then it opens up to 3. Perhaps a minimum, it would be great if the department could consider somehow being able to accommodate an extra lane, because if not, all those cars that end up in 3 lanes of traffic and a 4th right turn lane are going to be backing up onto the causeway.
So one of the things that we did now during construction is that we eliminated a signal at North Bayshore Drive. So this 1 lane, it's a free flow lane, and then we're using this area between Biscayne and North Bayshore Drive as storage, and we're adding the capacity in that way during construction. Now, in regards to the request to add a second lane at the entrance of the ramp, which is back here. So we've done studies to see if it's possible, and at the end of these studies, we did a feasibility study, and we don't have we have 2 constraints that won't allow us to expand or widen the road in this area. The first one, it's the the location of the Metro Mover Pier, adjacent to the north side of the ramp. And the second one is the limited right-of-way that the department owns in this area. So
So,
due
but
to
that's,
these
that's the
physical
right of way
barriers,
that
we
the
don't have
department
the room.
owns. So let me interrupt you there. That's limited right of way that the department owns. There is right of way then, but right of way that the department does own that perhaps might be owned by other jurisdictions.
I understand this property beyond our property is private property.
Yeah, that property is owned by Resorts World International.
Okay. I think this is an issue that's of concern, not just to us, to residents in the city of Miami Beach as they're heading towards the mainland, but it's also a concern to residents in the city of Miami as they're leaving Miami Beach and going back to the mainland. It's an issue that both cities share. I don't know, Jose, if you have any suggestions on this, but you know, there's this major construction project going on right now. And if we don't seize on this opportunity to address this before the permanent solution is built, we're going to miss the opportunity to fix this. And we're going to continue experiencing backups on the MacArthur Causeway. Is there anything that could be explored? Is there any solutions that better use of the existing right-of-way that could yield an extra lane?
Mr. Chair, I believe that FDOT is trying to maximize their right-of-way, but it is limited, as was mentioned. In these types of situations, there's always the option of eminent domain, because I think the constraint here is private property. I'm not sure if that's something that's been explored by the department for this situation, or if that's something that they would be open to even exploring at this point. I know it's a very long, drawn-out process, that of purchasing private property for a public transportation project.
Understood. Thank you. Commissioner Dominguez, you're recognized.
Thank you. I have been on a few calls with Palm Hibiscus and Oscar from FDOT regarding this. So I just wanted to share that with you, Commissioner, that the residents that live right there have been involved with FDOT and given their feedback, and Oscar there has been very receptive.
Thank you. Commissioner Suarez? Okay. I'm going to open up the floor to public comment. I see we have members of the public with their hands raised on Zoom. There are members of the public attending in person that would like to speak on this item. You're welcome to approach the podium. I see we have Alexander has his hand raised on Zoom. And there's another resident by the name of Caller User 2 that has their hand raised. Alexander, welcome. You're recognized.
Hello.
Good afternoon. Welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'll be real quick. My concern again is the exit of Biscayne Boulevard, and as you mentioned, it's both the concerns of residents of Miami Beach and Miami, and especially during, let's say, events being held at the arena, or whether it's a museum or a boat show or whatever. We still have that one-lane issue exit, and during peak times and during events, the concern is that we'll have this back up again into the one-lane exit, and that causes, as we've seen in the past 2-3 years of construction, the the constant merger in and out of cars, going into that exit or swerving out of that exit onto oncoming traffic. So. Again, my concern is that primarily, and I would really like to see if there's a possibility to maybe use the bike lane that is being added to that space, and also the pedestrian, to maybe explore the idea of doing a fly bridge for pedestrians and biking bikers, so that they can accommodate a second lane. And I'll take my answer off.
Thank you. Thank you for your participation. I see we have a member of the public by the username Colin User 2. who has their hand raised. Welcome, you're recognized.
And please state your name for the record before you
Hi.
speak.
Yes, good afternoon, please.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Matthew Goltanoff. I'm a resident of Miami Beach, and actually this couldn't be any more fitting. I am riding my bike on the MacArthur Causeway right now, heading downtown. And so the previous caller who was talking about potential ways to widen the exit lane, very fitting. I certainly do understand the idea behind potentially widening that exit lane, although I do understand what the person from FDOT was saying, how there's a lot of storage immediately to the west of this single lane. But I do want to bring up another topic. And in addition to Commissioner Vice Mayor Dominguez, I've also been working with Oscar Gonzalez from the public relations team and some of the members of the team to see if there's a way in which the bicycle lane, as it exits down that ramp towards Biscayne Boulevard, if that could also be improved in safety. Because as mentioned about that free flow exit lane, that would cross over the bike lane. So I just want to see and put on the record as well if there's a way in which there's a potential contemplation of redesigning this exit lane, if they could also look at improvements for the bike lane at the exit ramp and as it goes through the intersection of North Bay Shore Drive as well. And again, I just want to let you know, I'm on the bike lane right now heading downtown, and whatever can be done to make it even safer is always appreciated and opens the opportunity for more people to choose this mode of transportation. Thank you so much, Commissioner Fernandez, Chair, and everyone else who's on this call today. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Safe riding on the MacArthur Causeway. Thank you for your diligence in participating in our meeting while riding. Are there any other members of the public attending either in person or via Zoom wishing to speak? If you're in person, feel free to step up to the podium. Lola Benitez, your hand is raised on Zoom. Please unmute yourself. You have 2 minutes to speak. Welcome.
Hi, good evening. I'm also with the Department of Transportation. I just wanted to add to Jean's presentation that we obviously, as part of the project, we do a project traffic forecasting up to 2045 or 2050, I think. So we had accounted for all the traffic into our modeling. And one of the things that is gonna flush out most of the traffic is that free flow movement on the right turn onto Biscayne Bayshore Drive.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your participation, Lola, and for your input. We appreciate the feedback of the Florida Department of Transportation. Chad Fabricant, you have your hand raised on Zoom. Please unmute yourself. You have 2 minutes to speak. Welcome.
Hi, thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time. I just wanted to say, as a resident of Hibiscus Island, Chad Fabricant, 250 North Hibiscus, this situation needs a better resolution. I don't know what the resolution is, but I can tell you, living on Hibiscus Island and I'm in Hibiscus, we don't have any choice but to travel the MacArthur Causeway, whether it be to go right to downtown or left to Miami Beach. The MacArthur Causeway is our only way in and out. And the solution that currently exists and that is planned for the exit to Biscayne and the traffic and the bottleneck there is something that affects our daily life. So I don't think we've found the right solution yet, but I think it's something that we need to work towards and we need to work quickly towards. So thank you for your time. I just want to make sure that this directly impacts Miami Beach residents.
Thank you, Chad, and thank you for placing that on the record. It's the reason why I've placed this item on the agenda, because this is a significant impact to our residents, especially when you see the amount of density being developed on the Miami side. And when those people come to Miami Beach, when those residents of the city of Miami come to the city of Miami Beach and then go back to the city of Miami, the bottleneck that forms there is tremendous. I don't understand how there's 4 lanes of traffic, 1 right turn lane, 3 going straight once you get off the ramp, but only 1 lane on the ramp. To me, when 1 lane becomes 4 lanes it's an indicator that you have a high volume of traffic. It won't be a surprise that you're going to have a backup of traffic. And so, Jose, put us in the proper posture. How can we productively move forward so that something positive can come as an outcome of this discussion, to see how do we somehow work with FDOT on a productive solution that addresses their needs, but also addresses the city's needs for added capacity to facilitate our residents' access to the city of Miami.
Sure. Mr. Chair, what I would proffer is re-engaging FDOT to potentially reach out to the private property owner. It seems that that is the constraint, and FDOT is limiting their improvements to their right-of-way, strictly what's in their right-of-way. So I'm not sure if, and I know FDOT is on the line, but I'm not sure if they have had any discussions with the abutting private property owner to see if some arrangement could be arrived at to use part of that, a portion of that private property, either on a temporary or on a permanent basis.
And I don't know if FDOT would like to respond to that.
Through the chair, good afternoon, everyone. This is Oscar Gonzalez. I just want to reiterate that it's important to not compare what's happening now with what the finished enhancement and improvements are going to bring to the city of Miami Beach and the city of Miami. We all know that during construction, there are constraints. We're building a major project. And we have to take some space to be able to build the project. So there are constraints in the number of lanes that we can provide. In
Thank
terms
you,
of the
Oscar, but
ramp.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Once you exit the ramp, and just for the record, I'm closing the public hearing. The public had an opportunity to be heard, so I'm closing the public hearing. Once you exit the ramp, how many lanes of traffic do you have?
Right now, one. When you exit the ramp, there's one lane that goes down.
Sir, on the permanent solution, on the permanent design, once you exit the ramp, how many lanes of traffic do you have?
There will be 4 lanes. It'll
Four
open
lanes
up
of
to 4
traffic
lanes.
once you exit the ramp. How many lanes of traffic
Right.
will you have on the ramp?
On the ramp, there will be 1 lane.
1 lane. If 1 lane becomes 4 lanes, why is it that you have 4 lanes if you don't expect for there to be the need for 4 lanes, if the volume is not there? You build
the
4
vol-
lanes
the
because
vo-
you anticipate that you're
the-
going to have that level of volume.
No, understood, but that volume is projected to be handled by the opening up into the 4 lanes, the free flow right turn lane is expected to process over 20% of the vehicles going into the lane, then the synchronization of the timing, the signals that will allow more vehicles to flush through both intersections. In addition to that, we're adding lanes west of Biscayne Boulevard on Northeast 13th Street that again will process more vehicles through every signal phase. Now, the point I want to make is that right now there's 1 lane on the ramp, and it continues to be 1 lane until Bayshore Drive. So at this point, we don't have the benefit of those other 3 lanes, including the free flow right turn, which all studies, as Lola Aureliz Benitez mentioned, indicate that will handle the future traffic volume. So we cannot compare what's happening right now to what's going to happen when we're completed. And then in addition to that, we don't have the full capacity that we're going to have on 395 westbound and eastbound. Right now, we have all the traffic on what's going to be the future collector distributor road in the westbound and eastbound direction. We haven't even built the main line 395 yet. which is going to greatly enhance capacity and flush out even more vehicles through that area. So right now, we're constrained in the number of lanes that we can provide, but that's going to increase dramatically when the project is completed.
Thank you. Thank you, Oscar. What I'd like to request is, Jose, I'd like to request on behalf of the committee for you, for staff to continue working with FDOT because, you know, I hear everything that the department is mentioning. We always want to trust the studies, but we also need to, you know, acknowledge the concern that our residents have. And you know, clearly, you know, I feel based on what's been presented here, there isn't greater capacity being provided on this ramp as a result of space, but it's not as a result of a lack of need. And that to me is evident when you get one lane become 4 lanes once you go west of the ramp. So if you could continue working with FDOT on solutions, do you think it'd be feasible for you to present back to us an update in September as to you know, possible solutions to address this?
I believe so, Mr. Chair. I'll work with Oscar and the FDOT team.
Great. And thank you, FDOT. I appreciate you taking time to be here. And I understand that you guys find yourself pressed for space and dealing within a certain area of right-of-ways. But I do believe, you know, we need to take advantage that this hasn't been built yet to be able to mitigate challenges that we will encounter once what is being proposed is built. So thank you for your presentation on this item. Mr. Planning Director, let's call up item number 13.
Okay, Mr. Chair, item number 13 is a discussion regarding the I-95 Julia Tuttle Causeway. And just for a clarification, item 12 is being continued to the September 4th LUSC meeting by acclamation.
Yes, with a request for the department to continue working with FDOT on this item. Jose, would you kind of brief us on what is being proposed by FDOT on the Julia Tuttle Causeway?
Sure. So through the chair, item 13 pertains to a future FDOT project along the Julia Tuttle Causeway from Alton Road on the Miami Beach side to Biscayne Boulevard on the City of Miami side. The project is currently in what's called a PD&E phase, Project Development and Environment phase. The project manager for the PD&E study is attending virtually. His name is Robert Linares. He's with Metric Engineering, and he can speak on behalf of FDOT on this project and the status of the PD&E study.
Thank you, Robert. Welcome.
Good evening, Commissioner and committee. Thank you for the opportunity. I also have with me, I'm the consultant project manager. I also have with me Yvette Fontaneas, who's the department project manager, as well as some additional team members. I know that you're pressed for time, so yes. This is similar to the previous presentation, about a 10-minute presentation. If there's any areas that you really want us to focus on, Commissioner, we can kind of drill down to that area.
Give us an overview of what is being proposed on the Julia Tuttle Causeway.
Perfect. Okay. Next slide. Caitlin, if you want, the limits of the project are from I-95 all the way across to Alton Road. Next slide. Next slide. I'll walk through this. I don't want to take too much of the time. I want the big overview. So, in essence, need for the project, right? Based on existing operational deficiencies, crashes, all along the I-195 and specifically in the area between I-95 and Biscayne Bay. And then, of course, the issues once you get on the Miami Beach side with Alton Road and 41st Street. The department saw the need to perform this product development and environment study to not only address kind of some of the current issues that are being experienced, but when you look at the design year traffic of 2050 for the area, to make sure that, that we address a lot of the operational and safety issues. So in essence, the recommendations that are being brought forth, next slide, Caitlin, focus on a number of major elements. Number one, this project will provide for new express lane connections to and from I-195, again, providing that critical connectivity that Miami Beach currently does not have from I-195. This project will provide direct lanes from I-95 to a new elevated section that's being proposed on top of I-195. That new elevated section that you see in this cross section will provide uninterrupted flow for the traffic that's accessing those ramps from I-95 to Miami Beach. And essentially those ramps, that overhead structure would not go all the way to Miami Beach. Once you get to Biscayne Bay, it starts coming back down and merging into the causeway. The main reason that this structure is being contemplated is to separate the traffic that's getting on and off at Miami Avenue and at US 1 Biscayne Boulevard. A lot of the operational and safety issues is associated with the exit movements and the entrance movements coming off in this area. So by separating the traffic, that traffic that is not intended to go local but wants to go to and from Miami Beach, it's going to significantly improve the operations and safety in this area. In addition to that, we're looking at interchange improvements at US 1 and Biscayne Boulevard, and also the beginning of a dedicated shared use path between the city of Miami and Miami Beach that will be separated from traffic on a separate structure. Next slide. So one of the concerns, understandably, is there's limited amount of capacity and improvements that can take place on Alton Road, on 41st Street. So any project that is developed, we have to be mindful of that. So the reality is that a lot of the improvements that are taking place that I just described are really operational and safety improvements, much more than capacity improvements. Having said that, the intent is to match back up to the existing causeway configuration. If you see that cross section that's labeled as A, we would be providing 3 continuous lanes similar to what's there today in each direction. The idea is to also provide a concrete barrier separation, provide full width shoulders for the continuation of the bus on shoulders. And then you see on the outside where we'd have the shared use path along the causeway as well. And then once you get to the Miami Beach connection, again, understanding that there's only so much, we can't provide the super wide and then merge down at Alton Road. So what we've done to improve operations is in the eastbound direction, you currently have, and again, these are all proposed alternatives. You currently have a choice lane where you have 3 lanes that kind of split into 2-2, whether you're going to, northbound on Alton or on 41st, or if you're going southbound. What this project does is that it actually brings in, as you're approaching that causeway bridge, it opens things up so you have 2 lanes so that you better distribute the traffic, they have less operational issues, and also improve on safety. And then in the westbound direction, we've also modified things where the existing on-ramp from Alton Road westbound is now separated, does not merge immediately with the I-195 westbound traffic, but merges with the other entrance ramps coming from the hospital and from southbound Alton. And those have an opportunity to merge. We're widening that section. Then we provide a much longer merge and then bring it back and connect to the existing typical along the causeway. And then lastly, we're also introducing triple left turns into the hospital, as we understand that's a major movement. And we're also, one of the things that we're taking into consideration, that we know that there's flooding on a number of these ramps and streets, and we have identified already some of these roadways that are under the design high water. So as part of this project, we would be looking to raise those roadways as well. With regards to the specifics with that, I can pass it over to Tommy, who can briefly talk about some of the drainage issues as well as some of the design high water issues as well.
If I may jump in here while you have this slide up. So you mentioned that there's going to be an expansion of lanes available, I guess, when you're heading south on Alton Road to enter the Julia Tuttle Causeway. Is that correct?
Saying here, essentially, currently, this all merges into one. We're going to maintain 2 lanes. And then the ramp coming from northbound Alton, that's going to go westbound. The loop ramp, I'm sorry, because I'm not controlling the, yeah, Caitlin, like that, the loop ramp. Yes, so all these lanes are going to be separated by a barrier. There's going to be a barrier in between the westbound through lanes and the westbound ramps that are coming on. And then that's going to have additional lanes extending all the way onto the ramp, to the bridge, Causeway Bridge. And then it's going to merge back down to the existing 3-lane section.
So you're
And that should
adding, you're adding more westbound lanes from 41st Street onto the Julia Tuttle.
Well, I want to say it's not a complete, it's not a through lane, Commissioner. It's just where right now that all merges, within a very short amount of time and onto the existing. So we're providing for, a better, safer condition operationally, where eventually it does taper down to the existing typical section on the causeway. But yes, in this area, we are providing additional laneage and merging areas to better accommodate the traffic.
And that's important because currently, and I'm going to recognize Commissioner Suarez next. Right now, we face tremendous traffic westbound on 41st Street, and it seems it heads towards the Julia Tuttle, and a lot of times. Sometimes it's caused by backups on I-95. A lot of times, some people, would say it's because they can't access the express lane. You're proposing here something that will help address that. But a lot of times that there is backup on 41st Street heading westbound, it clears up once you enter the Tuttle. And there's some sort of congestion, some sort of flow issue at that juncture where 41st Street, Alton Road, meet the Julia Tuttle, that needs to be fixed. And hopefully, that's something that you're taking into consideration as you're looking at the lanes and the reconfiguration you're projecting here. Commissioner Suarez, you're recognized.
Yeah, I'm just trying to decipher. So right now on 41st Street, we have, how many lanes go west and come on east when they get to 41st Street? It's 2,
You have 2
correct?
lanes, 2 lanes and 1 turning lane.
So is this going to expand it? So how do they accommodate they're going to go down from 3 to 2, just like it is now?
Well, as Robert mentioned, they're going to be adding lanes, adding capacity to the section between Alton Road and Main Line, Julia Tuttle, because right now all those merges are happening in a very short space. So they're going to be extending that a bit and adding lanes. But Robert, feel free to chime in.
No, that's exactly right. And also another key friction point that causes is that existing loop ramp that merges right onto the westbound, just right after the 41st Street intersection. So that's being removed and that's being separated with a barrier separation. It's not going to merge until much further down along the causeway.
Okay.
So from your analysis, right now, it's the merge that's happening further east that may potentially be causing challenges, and you're pushing that to be further west so that there's more capacity as we're closer to the city.
Correct. And we're adding additional lanes to better flush out all the traffic with all these movements kind of coming in from different directions in a very short area.
Okay, and that I believe.
And Jose, as you know, we're in PD&E, and as we move forward with the traffic report and the analysis, where we're going to document and actually have to show you and show the stakeholders exactly the benefits and how these proposed improvements are benefiting traffic. Obviously, we'll more than happy to share those reports with once they're reviewed by DOT with the city as well.
Great, thank you. And so you're addressing part of the concerns that I had, which is how do we, use this opportunity to address a lot of the congestion that we have on 41st Street. And I think some of what you're proposing could potentially address that. One of the other issues that we experience as it relates to the Julia Tuttle Causeway, has to do with environmental issues. When you look at the Biscayne Bay health status and the report card put out by Miami-Dade County, there continues to be a decline of the seagrass and seagrass die-off that is happening on Biscayne Bay, and in large part because you really don't have adequate flow of water on Biscayne Bay, in large part because we have the structure that is the MacArthur Causeway. What is being done to consider raising Julia Tuttle so that we help facilitate that flow of water and help improve the quality of seagrass and marine life on Biscayne Bay?
And I want to make sure, Commissioner, I understand your question. Are you saying in terms of the existing, removing the existing causeway islands, or what, in terms of improving flow?
Well, when you look at Biscayne, when you look at the Julia Tuttle right now, the road, in large part, interrupts the flow of water on Biscayne Bay. You've created an island on Biscayne Bay. One of the issues that Miami-Dade County has been focused on, we've been focused on as a city, is water quality. What is being done to restore water flow as part of this Julia Tuttle project?
So, Tommy, can you talk a little bit about kind of what we're doing for water quality, and then Caitlin, you can add on to that in terms of some of the resiliency features and some of the coordination that's happening on that front.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. So we're addressing water quality. I want to touch bases real quick just because of the order of the slide. This slide is about the sea level rise. This project is taking into account sea level rise by following the FDOT drainage manual, which requires us to take into account the mean high tide as well as the sea level rise. So just for the record, we're taking that into account. We've got a design high water of 1.47. Next slide, please. There are 13 basins, stormwater basins in this project. Basins 8 through 13 have direct discharge into Biscayne Bay. That's a total of 6 basins. So basins 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. Next slide. As you know, Biscayne Bay is classified as an outstanding Florida water body. So as a result, we will need to provide an additional 50% treatment of what, in addition to normal water quality. So whatever everybody else has to provide, we've got to do 50% more. As you can imagine, the causeway, there's not a lot of space for ponds or anything like that. So what we're proposing there is something known as an advanced vortex separator. We're anticipating using 25 of them. If you look down at the image, you can see the aerial image. You can see the little yellow dots. That's basically where we're anticipating these structures to be. And these structures work a lot. If you look at the image to the right, these structures work a lot like those bagless vacuum cleaners where the sediment, the runoff comes in, it gets whirled around just by centrifugal force.
Yeah, and I don't mean to interrupt, and I appreciate what you are presenting here to deal with the treatment of water that is collected, especially storm water that's collected from this project. I guess what I'm trying to inquire is how this project could more directly benefit Biscayne Bay if this moves forward. Has FDOT studied the possibility of raising the portions of the Julia Tuttle Causeway that right now are islands that are pretty much blocking the flow of water on Biscayne Bay and affecting the seagrass and the marine life and the water quality in these areas of Biscayne Bay.
May I?
Yes, Commissioner Suarez.
Thank you, Chairman. I think where the chairman's getting at is, there's essentially an island in the middle of the Biscayne Bay, and that prevents the flushing and water flow of the northern part of Miami Beach during the high tide, low tide. And is there any appetite to possibly really envision the Julia Tuttle to I don't know, maybe perhaps raise it and have more of a bridge instead of a flat island? I know that's very long-term visionary plans, but we've had a lot of water quality issues on the northern part of Miami Beach, and we believe that's a direct result of the flushing during the tides, and having a big impediment of a man-made island in the middle of the bay kind of prevents that from happening. So, is there any sort of appetite to take that into consideration?
I mean, I guess I can lead that, and then in terms of right now, what's being looked at for this project, removal of that island and kind of making, elevating that and making it all one continuous bridge is not something that's being contemplated. I can say, and Caitlin can touch on this, there are a number of benefits that are associated, and there's a number of agencies that are looking at these islands from a living shoreline standpoint, and some of the benefits associated with that, that we're trying to find opportunities on how we can partner with those agencies and kind of use this project to help build off some of the plans that a number of these studies are looking at, these studies that are taking a hard look at Biscayne Bay are actually calling out as beneficial to the bay. And so far, I don't believe any of those have called for the removal. They've called for some living shorelines and some other elements, but Caitlin, I think you're better. Maybe you can touch on some of that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we've been, like Robert was saying, we've been tracking different studies. Obviously, some of these studies have changed a lot in the types of projects and alternatives that they're considering, specifically the Army Corps' Back Bay Coastal Storm Risk Management Feasibility Study. But yeah, a lot of the project designs that we've been tracking, trying to identify opportunities for shoreline stabilization as well as roadway elevation that Tommy already discussed, that we're already looking into, that the department more frequently uses for resiliency. We've been trying to identify potential projects in the areas. The Back Bay did identify living seawall, hybrid seawall designs, and potential mangrove restoration on Causeway Islands, but no, we haven't. Any of the studies we've been tracking so far, please, if the committee is familiar with one, please let us know. We haven't seen any that we're studying or recommending or evaluating the removal of Causeway Islands. If anything, we saw kind of a restoration or mangrove planting of Causeway Islands considered in some of these.
Yeah, through the chair.
Yes.
I think, if you can go back to that slide that you just had up, that's most of a cross section of Biscayne Bay that is blocked off, and I'm not saying remove the whole island and make the whole Julia Tuttle a free floating structure, but maybe parts of it. Maybe we open up 2 or possibly 3 sections where water can flow through, very, very short bridges, that perhaps maybe a kayaker or paddlers can go under. But, holistically looking at Miami Beach as a whole, we've had some serious water quality issues in the north, and again, I think it's directly correlated with the flushing of, from the tides. So, if there could be an appetite for that, I mean, that would be phenomenal.
And just, we're lay people on this committee. And we appreciate the leadership of the Florida Department of Transportation with this project. I think just as residents that serve in this elected capacity and as stewards of our environment, what we're looking at is, how this could be an opportunity to restore water quality, improve issues with the buildup of nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen and chlorophyll that we've seen in Biscayne Bay, the bacterial growth that we've seen there, the deterioration in water quality, the loss of marine life like seagrass and sponges that used to flourish in this area, and how we've continually, year after year, seen that continue, and how this could present an opportunity, this investment that the state is looking to make to address some of these issues, and so whether it be through mangrove restoration, certainly that could be a wonderful opportunity, or whether it could be something more bold, like what Commissioner Suarez has mentioned, and looking at portions where you can raise some parts of this island. It'd be great if you could use the opportunity of the stage that you're currently in, this PD&E stage, to study that and see if there's any potential to make some of these improvements. I think it's something that Miami Beach, that is so focused on the environment, that Miami-Dade County is so dependent on ecotourism. We want to make sure that our water quality continues to be strong. Biscayne Bay is a big part of that, and we can't afford to continue to see the level of deterioration of water quality that we've seen in Biscayne Bay. This project could push us in the right direction, and if FDOT could study some of these opportunities and perhaps report back to us in the near future, it could be appreciated by this committee.
Well said.
Yeah. All right. So Jose, when do you think, what do you think, put us in a proper posture so that we can move in the right direction with this item?
With regard to the Julia Tuttle?
Yes.
Well, let me backtrack. With regard to the MacArthur, we said we'd come back to the September land use meeting on that right-of-way issue, constraints. With regard to the Julia Tuttle PD&E, I'm gonna need FDOT to, depending on where they are in their analysis and when they're gonna finish, to maybe give me some guidance as to when we can come back with some more information on this topic of water quality.
Yes, on how we can take advantage of this project to improve water flow and water quality.
This is the phase.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, do you want to show that one as continued to a future date?
Yeah, to no date certain.
Okay.
Yes, and thank you, FDOT, for attending. Before we move on this item, just in case there's members of the public, and I apologize earlier on, we took on items and we didn't open up to members of the public, but if there's any members of the public present that wish to speak on this item, seeing none on Zoom either, I'm going to close the public hearing on this item. With that, Mr. Director, let's call up item number 5.
Okay, Mr. Chair, item number 5 is discuss a proposal to revitalize the 200 to 300 blocks of Lincoln Road between Washington Avenue and Collins Avenue, including pedestrianization of the corridor, other streetscape improvements, and amendments to the land development regulations.
Thank you, and I want to thank Commissioner Magazine for joining me as a co-sponsor on this item. Commissioner Magazine, since I'm chairing, why don't you take the lead in presenting this item?
Thank you, Commissioner. Caught me off guard a little bit, but this really helps facilitate the goal a lot of us have talked about: bring more residential housing, which is really reducing the toll on our infrastructure. It allows people to work in our city. It helps lead to the revitalization that is badly needed of Lincoln Road. Because we think about it, we have all these parking garages around, all these surface parking lots. Why is that? It's to bring customers to a pedestrian shopping center. Well, what better way to bring customers than actually having people that live right there, that live, work, and play in the area, that care about the area. So it's really solving many multiple goals. If you look at the 200 to 300 blocks, it's not putting our best foot forward for Miami Beach. And in many ways, this is the gateway area, what should be one of the most iconic intersections of Miami Beach. And this plan really goes a long way towards getting that there. It's going to essentially extend the pedestrian boulevard 1 block further eastward, which actually cuts off right now, I believe at Washington. It extends that 1 block eastward to Collins Avenue. And then it's going to bring much needed residential housing there. That's going to help revitalize that area, beautify it. The area right now is, like I said, I'm not going to beat it up, but it's not putting our best foot forward. And I think this really starts to deliver on a plan that we're all proud of.
Thank you, Commissioner Magazine. And I want to echo some of your comments. Certainly, this is an area of our city that needs attention, that needs improvement. I can't see any better way to improve an area than to have full-time residents, people invested there, who go out to walk, who see something and who report something, who take pride and ownership in an area. Our city has already started advancing on efforts to pedestrianize and revitalize at certain areas on Lincoln Road, especially the corridor east of Washington Avenue, those 100, 200, and 300 blocks of Lincoln Road. In December of last year, the Historic Preservation Board approved a certificate of appropriateness specifically for pedestrianization improvements in this part of Lincoln Road, but it does present the opportunity. We really do want to see this area improve. We really want to see this area flourish. It presents the opportunity of identifying it as an area to promote residential development. And not just residential development. It's something that I would like for us to focus on. It's not just residential development, but with a focus on the forgotten middle. We have a forgotten middle that's not eligible for affordable housing or workforce housing, but they're being priced out of our city. Young professionals who work jobs and just because of the market in Miami Beach, we're losing them. We're losing them to Brickell. We're losing them to other areas in the city of Miami. We're losing them to Broward County, and we need to retain this talent. We should be aiming to retain this talent in our city because they've been part of the fabric of Miami Beach, and we can't lose that character that we have, the fabric of the warmth of the people that have been part of our community. I believe this presents an opportunity if we can find the proper development incentives to increase our residential population and help keep a segment of our population that's being priced out. This would be a good opportunity to achieve that. Commissioner Suarez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to echo the same sentiment. It's very similar to the Washington Avenue proposal that this committee has unanimously approved, where we want to incentivize residential development for that missing middle. I have an item that was referred the last commission meeting to not just limited to the 300 block, but all of Lincoln Road. I'm more than happy to bifurcate that if moving forward. But I think let's not limit it to just a couple blocks. I think if we're going to take a real bold step in rethinking how Lincoln Road is for the next 20, 30, 40 years, let's think of it. Let's do it the whole thing. Lincoln Road is perfect. Between Lincoln Road and what we want to do on Washington Avenue, you don't need a car. You have Trader Joe's at the end of Lincoln Road. You have the beach on the other. You have all sorts of cafes that you could ever ask for. You have shopping. And if you work here, it's paradise. And so I'm going to be fully in support of this for many of the comments being made.
Thank you. And I think it's also important to recognize the historic character. There are a lot of historic assets in this part of Lincoln Road, properties that have rich architectural significance that we need to be very mindful of. And one of the things that I like before recognizing Commissioner Dominguez is that perhaps, whatever we explore here, number one, prioritizes that. That is the character we can't afford to lose. Our history in architecture, but our history in the fabric of our community. We want to preserve both. The people who have made Miami Beach this community, and we can't forget about them. They're being priced out. They're moving away, and we need to see how we create residential opportunities to keep them in our city. But also the historic character that makes us unique, that makes us special. And any policy that we craft needs to prioritize those two elements. We can't sacrifice the historic character of our community, but we can't sacrifice our resident base. And any policies that we craft and bring forward need to marry and prioritize both. Commissioner Dominguez, you're recognized.
Thank you. So that area definitely has some sections of it that look blighted at times, and it's just awful. And I met with the developer, as we all did, I'm sure, and they showed renderings of what the vision is for that area, and it does look absolutely beautiful. It's something that will elevate our city and that particular area. They were also very receptive that there has to be some parking, because if the plumbing breaks, if the electrician needs to come, if the floor, there needs to be some place for these service people to park. But if we reimagine Lincoln Road and bring residential, I think it will help. Give it a shot in the arm, because if you look at Lincoln Road now, it's just more and more vacancies, and it's time to reimagine.
Yes, thank you. And you're right, there is a developer out there that has their own idea of this, but the reality is that I think, while one property owner might have a vision for this, is multiple property owners. I think us as a city government need to look at this with the bigger vision of seeing, okay, how can we improve this area? How can we provide for housing opportunities for residents being priced out? And how do we preserve the deteriorating historic assets that we risk losing unless we help make their preservation financially viable? With that, I'm going to open the floor to public comment. If there's members of the public attending in the chambers wishing to speak, please approach the podium. I see on Zoom we have Daniel Serraldo with his hand raised. Daniel, welcome. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Yes, hi, thank you, Commissioners. A very interesting conversation. Daniel Serraldo with Miami Design Preservation League. It all sounds very interesting, especially the part about ensuring that we're focused on that missing middle. I think, unfortunately, in the last 10 years, the city leaders have always said that they want this missing middle, and so we've had upzonings in North Beach, and we've had Collins Avenue upzoning, and all to encourage residences. And unfortunately, we're finding out the devil is really in the details. I did happen to look on this agenda item. I don't see any plans, any zoning changes, any renderings or presentations. I heard that the commissioners said they had some meetings. Obviously, I think this should have very public meetings and definitely get all the different stakeholders involved, but certainly something interesting without any details. I'll look further to hearing more and really having that robust public input to ensure the outcome that we all want, not just ultra luxury, that's the only thing getting built now, but true missing middle. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Johan Moore, you have your hand raised on Zoom. Welcome. Please unmute yourself. You have 2 minutes to speak. Johan? Oh, Johan, we lost Johan.
Yeah.
Oh, we hear you now, Johan. Welcome. We don't hear you, Johan. All right, with that, I see we have a member of the public. Welcome.
Yes, sorry. Hello?
Yes, welcome, Johan. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you very much. I actually had my hand up very briefly before in order to praise your pursuit of increased tidal flushing. I just want to echo what Daniel said on this item. I did not, in fact, have my hand up for this item. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your participation. Mr. Larkin, welcome. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Michael Larkin, 200 South Biscayne Boulevard, here representing Peter Canavos with the Ritz-Carlton Ownership Group. Thank you very much for your sponsorship of this legislation, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Magazine. I think this could be transformative for these 2 blocks. If you think about it, this is the epicenter of the city center, and there are no residential uses from, I would say, the Haddon Hall property to the south, which is about 15th Street, shooting northwards, 16th Street. If you think about going all the way to 17th Street with Washington and Collins as the boundaries, there are no residential uses. So this scarcity of residential uses, that I feel, has led to the downside and the blighted condition of these roads. It would be an absolute cure to introduce residential uses here. And the missing middle is an appropriate way to describe it. Won't be luxury housing, it'll be the missing middle. It'll appeal to young professionals from downtown, appeal to perhaps to families, single moms with kids. It'll be a great way to rejuvenate these 2 blocks. And I appreciate your leadership. We look forward to working with you all to make this happen.
Thank you. And I want to just, highlight again the missing middle, or the forgotten middle, because I'm working with our city attorney's office, with our planning department, and others on policy that I'm going to be bringing forward in that segment of our population. We hear a lot about affordable housing. We hear a lot about workforce housing. The reality is that, those definitions are getting lost in our community, because we have a big resident base that don't qualify for that type of housing, and we're losing them. And we're losing them in droves to other areas of our region. And these are young professionals. These are families. These are people that have established themselves in Miami Beach, and the market is no longer allowing them to continue living in Miami Beach. And we really want to continue being the vibrant community we can't lose this fabric of our community. And so with the assistance of the city attorney's office and our planning department and stakeholders in the community, I'll be bringing in the near future legislation about, to help those people that make beyond 120 of the AMI, or redefining what the AMI actually represents, because the AMI of Miami-Dade County might not reflect the realities in Miami Beach. The market in Miami Beach is very different than what it is in Kendall or in other parts of Miami-Dade County. And we have to make sure that these policies for housing that we put forward reflect that. With that, does this committee by acclamation support asking the planning department to work on potential land development regulations to bring forward at the September meeting, so that we can discuss those policies for residential uses on Lincoln Road? Yes, okay. So Commissioner Suarez, yes. Okay, so by acclamation, let's continue this item to September. We're going to ask our planning department, look at the area, bring forward what you believe would be appropriate policies for us to consider. I don't want this to be politically driven policies. I want them to be professionally driven, that are in context with the character of the area, that respect the historic character of Lincoln Road, and that helps facilitate the need for housing in the area. Great. With that, let's continue this item to September. Let's introduce item number 6.
Okay, item number 6 is discuss the proposed 6th Street overlay.
All right, Commissioner Dominguez, this is your item. You're welcome to present.
Thank you. So I have been working, this actually is Mayor Minor's original item, and I agreed to be a co-sponsor. And I've been working with the Flamingo Park Neighborhood Association and also with the planning department on this item, and I'll let Tom Mooney tee it up, please.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Dominguez. This is an item that's had a fairly lengthy history. It actually started back in 2021 and actually made its way through land use to the planning board. And then when it got to the city commission for first reading in October of 23, it was referred back to the land use committee for further discussion. For the sake of brevity, I'll just get right to what the updates are. The revised version of the ordinance that's been prepared for discussion has been modified and is more consistent with a number of the use recommendations put forth by the Flamingo Park Neighborhood Association. This includes that outdoor ambient music and television sets would be prohibited within 200 feet of the south side of 6th Street. Outdoor restaurant seating would be limited to 100 seats within 200 feet of the south side of 6th Street. Outdoor seating above the ground floor or rooftop seating within 200 feet of the south side of 6th Street would be prohibited. Some of the areas that we still have not reached consensus with, some of the recommendations of the Flamingo Park Neighborhood Association include the maximum height permitted for those portions of lots fronting on 6th Street. The administration is recommending that the maximum height within the first 100 feet of a property south of 6th Street shall be up to 50 feet. And we've also recommended that some of the potential exceptions that have been proposed with regard to properties on Lenox and properties on Jefferson Avenue be designed in a way so they don't create legal conforming uses. Lastly, with regard to transient uses, at this time, the administration is not recommending an outright prohibition on hotels. Perhaps the types of hotels could be further fine-tuned to make sure it's the type of hotel that should be used. We do have a concern that by prohibiting hotels outright, you could actually be encouraging more short-term rental of apartment units, since we are preempted from being able to regulate short-term rental in this area. With that said, we believe that the ordinance has been developed enough where it could go back to the city commission for a new referral to the planning board based upon the direction of the land use committee at today's meeting.
Are there still outstanding discrepancies? I know we have Flamingo Park here, we have a property owner here. Has everything been ironed out between the two?
So there's three areas that I think we still have a lack of consensus. One would be what the maximum building height should be within the first 100 feet south of 6th Street. The administration has recommended that it remain at 50 feet. Currently, you can go up to 75 feet if you have a hotel or a residential use. We're recommending that on the first two lots, it be capped at 50 feet. The reason we have a concern with going lower than that, and the Flamingo Park Neighborhood Association has recommended 28 feet, is that because the FAR is 2.0, it could constrain the ability to be able to max out those development rights. Certainly, if it's a much larger property that has been aggregated with multiple lots south of 6th Street, you could easily push the height back, and we think that at that point, you could have height limitations. The other area would be that we would not recommend a total prohibition on hotel uses, to the extent that the committee wants to recommend some tightening of the regulations to ensure the right type of hotel use. I think that's fine. And then lastly, with regard to the exceptions, we believe that because the properties in question either already have a land use board approval or will be seeking some type of affirmative approval, that any exception be based upon those approvals as opposed to either creating a separate carve-out or creating a legal conforming use.
Vice Mayor Dominguez.
Thank you. So I'll let Flamingo Park Neighborhood Association come up, and also the property owner come up and see if we can iron out the differences. Scott?
Okay, I'm going to open up the floor to public comments. If there's members of the public wishing to speak on this item, please approach the podium, and if you're on Zoom, please raise your hand. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Scott Needleman, representing the residents of the Flamingo Park neighborhood. I guess you all know the history of this. This has been around quite a bit, back and forth. I just want to touch on some of the things that Tom mentioned, and when we spoke, Tom, you did, yesterday, you did say that we're kind of on board with most of the things. I'll touch on first the height. We are recommending 28 feet, and we'd like to see that move forward. The reason being is that we're looking at what we call a whole block development. If a developer aggregates a bunch of lots that go from 6th Street down to 5th Street, then there's no issue whatsoever in that development getting their full FAR, because they'll have the opportunity to push most of that development towards 5th Street, and when the part of their development closer to 6th Street could be lower, could be 28 feet or whatever. If we take that out now, then we lose that protection. So for some of these differences, what we'd like to see is the FP&A's version, the residents' version of the ordinance, move forward. And then at planning board, that issue can be worked out. We can work out the issues with the properties that have existing development orders, or one that's another issue that's being, another possible development or project on Jefferson Avenue. So, we think our ordinance is the best thing for the neighborhood, for the residents in the neighborhood. We do know there's discrepancies, and we just want ours to move forward with the understanding that we will be working out these issues, whether at planning board or, it may come back to you, it may go to first reading down the line, but that's what our intention is.
Thank you. Mark Needle, you have your hand raised. Please unmute yourself. You have 2 minutes to speak.
Yes, I am fully in support of what Scott Needleman just said on behalf of the Neighborhood Association. I think that the reason for going forward with our ordinance, even with the differences that Tom Mooney ably stated, is because we are looking at the big picture, and we want to preserve the best scenario for the larger scale developments. I think by your giving direction to move forward in this way, we'll get the staff expertise focused on where exactly you draw the line and how we can create the appropriate incentives. And likewise, as it relates to the property, the prior approvals, we have no intention to stop those developments from happening. In fact, we've been working with one that doesn't have a current proposal on Jefferson Avenue, because we're really not looking to change, to affect anybody's existing plans. So if you move it forward, we promise you we will be very reasonable in working with any affected property owners at the planning board, and hope to come up with a consensus solution. And if not, we will, you will have the opportunity to make a decision where there are disagreements, and we've had a chance to explore in some detail. This isn't the best place to go into the weeds on some of these issues. This land use committee, we certainly appreciate the efforts of staff and the commission on this, and look forward to, I know it's a long-term issue, like you were looking at some of these long-term transportation issues, but it's still going to be important, because we do think that 5th Street corridor will be developed, and we want to keep the impacts away from when they're quite foreseeable. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I do believe that this is the proper venue, in fact, to look at the details of these matters. That's the purpose of the Land Use Committee.
Thank you, Mr.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
And committee members. Mitch Novick, I've managed a building at 610 Jefferson Avenue for the last 32 years. I too echo the language that the Flamingo Park Neighborhood Association crafted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mitch. Johan Moore, you have your hand raised on Zoom. Welcome, you have 2 minutes to speak.
Yes, good evening again. Just wanted to thank Scott and Mark for their leadership on this issue. The outstanding issues, in fact, can be resolved, I believe, in particular, any ongoing discussions in good neighborly fashion concerning projects that have already come before the neighborhood association. The height is really, I think, a key issue, and it's a key issue not just on the south side of our neighborhood, but on the east side. I want to remind us of that as a holistic aspect of this. We want to avoid too high, basically. It's one of the most intrusive possible features that the community worries about consistently. And while we appreciate getting into the weeds, such as it may be useful with this committee, the neighborhood also trusts Planning Board to further sort through those weeds. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wishing to be heard on this item? Seeing, yep, welcome.
Thank you, Russell Galbert, on behalf of the property owner that is being affected by people who are not the property owner. First of all, I want to say that I have enormous respect for the Flamingo Park Association and to all the speakers earlier today. However, I do take exception to be included in this overlay. Whether the overlay is appropriate or proper, I don't even want to discuss today, other than the fact that our property should not be included. We're very privileged that the Flamingo Park Association unanimously supported our project. Any type of inclusion in an overlay, which I think is the wrong way to do any type of zoning, will kill this deal. It's as simple as that. No bank wants to lend on Miami Beach, and no bank wants to lend for a hotel. You just have to deal with reality today. Here are people telling you how you should affect a private party's property, and they've never gotten the difficult task of going out and getting financing to build a hotel on Miami Beach. Today, Miami Beach is not the same as it was before. Any local lender doesn't want to lend on a hotel, and they certainly don't want to lend on a hotel in Miami Beach. They have what's called government risk, hotel risk. There's just too many risks. Fortunately, we believe that we have an incredible project. We bought the project for over $4 million. We've spent almost $1 million between getting approvals, unanimous approvals, going back and forth, and in fact, almost ready to pull a permit and pay impact fees that are ridiculous, that don't exist in Miami, but only exist in Miami Beach. And here we are, a year later, trying to include a property that will kill the project. What does that say to people who have property rights and come to Miami Beach and want to help improve Miami Beach, save the historic district? What does it say about affordability? What does it say about traffic? You know, I have no problem with an overlay that doesn't affect my property. My property's already been approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Any other members of the public wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none in person, none in Zoom, I'm going to close the public comment period. Commissioner Dominguez, this is your item.
So I have a question for Tom. So if we move this item forward, can the planning board work with the property owner and Flamingo Park Neighborhood Association?
If this item is moved to the full city commission and the full city commission refers the item to the planning board, then what the planning board would be reviewing is the version of the ordinance that was referred by the commission. The planning board can make its own recommendations, as can planning staff. So whatever comes back to the commission at first reading, you'd be able to see what the planning board would be recommending as well as what staff would be recommending. And then that's when you would be able to shape the final version of the ordinance.
And if I may just add, the property owner and the Flamingo Park residents would have an opportunity to present their positions to the planning board as well. That is a public hearing.
Okay.
So my understanding was that the neighborhood association was favorable to making an exception for a previously permitted project, the project at Lenox Avenue and 6th Street. Is that correct?
I believe so. They had proposed some exception language. I don't know if the exception language that they proposed has been accepted by the property owner, but the Flamingo Park Neighborhood Association did propose their own exception language.
Okay. If I'd like to recognize Scott Needleman.
We, as Mr. Galbit stated, we endorse this project. We would like to see the project be developed.
But you do realize what he's mentioning, that making this property legal non-conforming could potentially,
regardless of whatever
hurt
kind
the
of language is
financing of
in
the
there.
project moving forward.
I understand what he's stating, but and again, depending on the language that's in there, we have no problem with language that would state if his building were to be knocked down by a hurricane, to rebuild it back with the same use and the same height. We have no issue if it burns down for him to rebuild the building with the same uses, same height, and same, basically everything. We'd like the building to be built and to remain there. And if it, for whatever reason, for any kind of casualty, it's destroyed, for him to be able to build it back. So I don't know what kind of language can effectuate that. It's beyond my scope, but we would be fine with that. We have no issue with that whatsoever.
I would suggest, and I look forward to hearing from my colleague Commissioner Suarez, you know, I would make this in this part of Sixth Street, you know, we don't want to get in the way of good policy, but we also don't want to get in the way of a project that can help the area. Right now, I don't think there's any activity happening on that site. I don't know the last time that there was any activity happening on that site. Certainly, I don't think we want to see more hotel development on Sixth Street, because we want to preserve the residential character of it. We want to limit outdoor restaurants, the rooftops. We want to limit all these other activities, music and TVs and that type of stuff. But I don't think we should get in the way of projects that can help improve the quality of the area. The good thing about policy is that, you know, you can always expand an overlay. If you want, you can start an overlay, you can always expand it. But I don't think our policies should get in the way of something that's already been approved. And that's my concern. When I'm hearing that the policy that we could potentially put forward could potentially affect the financing and the reality of something that we've already approved. I want to recognize Nick, and then I'm going to recognize Commissioner Suarez.
If I could make a suggestion, Mr. Chair, based on this discussion, is the boundaries of the proposed overlay could be revised to exclude exclude these properties. There's one development that has already been permitted and constructed, which is where the target is, and then the other is to the north of that parcel. So those properties could be excluded. I think that would be the better course.
I would feel more comfortable. This area needs support. This area needs investment. But this area also needs to be protected. We don't want to see out-of-scale development. We don't want to see large development. We don't want to see rooftop uses. We don't want to see, you know, outdoor entertainment and the ailments that have affected other areas. But I don't want us to get in the way of progress. I think what you're proposing sounds like perhaps accepting, you know, this area west of Michigan Court, between Michigan Court and Lenox Avenue, so that, you know, what's been planned can move forward, but the policy that's being put forward by the neighborhood could also move forward. And if the planning board feels that that should be included, the planning board could always, you know, recommend that. But I strongly feel, you know, that our policies shouldn't get in the way of a project that's already been approved. And that's the situation that we're encountering right now, Commissioner Suarez.
Thank you, Chairman. If you may, would it be possible to recognize Mr. Galbit and Scott and bring to the podium and I want to know where the rubber meets the road as far as where exactly is the issue. Because I can certainly understand that we want to improve the neighborhood, and I used to live on 4th for a decade, and it certainly seems, with like Tap closing down, and there's a couple gas stations. I mean, it's certainly underutilized. And look, when I hear of a hotel, I don't necessarily want to see another hotel.
It was approved already.
Yeah, I understand. And I know it's kind of on the fly, Mr. Galbut, but what I'd be asking is similar to what I'm doing on Washington Avenue, or what I'm proposing, and you may or may not have heard about this, but what would it take for you to possibly make a residential development, and where we would possibly give you more FAR? Let me finish it. Possibly a better height. And as long as there was no parking, where there would be no cars associated with it, it would be residential. Perhaps there might be a cap on the room size, and it would be, most importantly, non-transient. And I don't know if that's even possible. I mean, we are the land use committee, so I feel like we can talk about that. So that's one aspect, and the other issue I would really like to understand, and if that's not a possibility, what I'd really like to understand is, what is the fear between the Flamingo Park Neighborhood Association of the use that's gonna happen? Like, I can certainly understand that you don't want your property to be legal, non-conforming for financial reasons, but I want to just better get a grasp of the issue, because look, I mean, I'll be honest, I haven't heard from Russell about this. No one's, the only people that have come to me is Flamingo Park Neighborhood Association. And that's because this has been going on for years. This is before I was even elected, that I've kind of very lightly researched the subject. So I'd like to first start off with Mr. Galbut. Would there be any consideration to abandon a hotel project if we as a city commission were to give you perhaps an increase incentive for non-transient use?
Let me address that. I actually think that's a very smart thing on a commission's part. And I think it's very smart for Miami Beach to really be thinking about it, because we have a real affordability issue here that was alluded to by the outstanding chair of this committee. There is little doubt, and not only that, traffic is also affected in different ways as well by different uses. So I give you a lot of credit for thinking out of the box, and I actually think it's smart. What I would say to you is like this. I followed my policy in life is that when I try to do something of quality and something of importance, I stick to that plan, especially when I've spent $1 million doing that plan. Okay? There's no doubt that next to me is a 7-story Publix with a public parking garage right next to me. Okay? Who in their right mind wouldn't want my building in front of that, or in front of the Target that's behind me? The neighborhood embraced my project. The neighborhood wants this use, wants this project, and I am providing a beautiful Art Deco preservation project with 2 of the original buildings on the property, 2 out of 3 on the property. Everybody's embraced this project. What no one understands and no one's getting to is that any type of an overlay that affects this property is going to make it unfinanceable.
Oh, I understand that.
This is not a project of, this is a project of love. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. This is a project of love. This is not to make money. The answer is that it's like I did the sanctuary. It's like I did the Gale. Gale was a labor of love. There's no real money in any of these projects. It's just, I love the industry. I love cruising. I love hotels. And I love beautiful boutique projects. And I love historic preservation.
Right, Mr.
So no,
Galbut,
I would not change my
But what
plan.
I'm saying is, look, you may love hotels. I don't.
Right.
Not like, I think we're at the point now where we have a lot of hotel rooms in the city, like 5,000 or 6,000 coming online. What could we do to incentivize and make it so palpable for you
I think height and density are important things, and I think you should give them across the city, just like Live Local did. That's my personal opinion. We have to make affordability.
But for this particular project.
This is a historic district.
This is
And
I agree with you.
This is a historic district. We need to protect our historic districts. This area of our city is under threat by the state of Florida to allow for demolition of historic assets and for people to be able to rebuild with little regulation from our Historic Preservation Board. And this is a project that's been vetted through our Historic Preservation Board and has been approved by our Historic Preservation Board.
And you're killing it now if you
Please,
pass
Mr.
it.
Galbert,
Yeah, sorry.
there will be order in this meeting. I support the idea of us transitioning to non-transient uses, but we need to protect the character of our neighborhoods. And that is the intent of this overlay. The intent of this overlay is to see progress, but also is to protect the neighborhood from out of character height, from out of character density, from out of character uses as well. And I think that this is where we need to find the middle ground and the balance. You know, we could go one route that my colleague is proposing of, you know, incentivizing the elimination of hotel uses by adding height and density, but that goes against the vision of the neighborhood. Or we can try to find a middle ground where we allow something that's been vetted through our Historic Preservation Board, that the neighborhood association backed
Unanimously.
to move forward, and we can still let the rest of this overlay move forward that still protects the rest of Sixth Street. Commissioner Suarez.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, you know, I think when you have a Historic Preservation Board or a Planning Board that has given approval, you know, they're doing it under a very tight guardrail where that's the only option they can, you know, have purview over. But what I'm saying is, look, we have a housing problem in Miami Beach, as the chairman carefully put in the beginning. And I don't necessarily want to rule out where we can come to a middle ground between Flamingo Park and the property owner to make something that is a lot more palpable, and perhaps the property doesn't need to be part of the overlay. You know, the big reason I got into politics was because of 3 buildings in a historic district through a loophole became hotels. And I can guarantee you that everyone in the neighborhood did not want that in order to preserve those buildings, because their quality of life, having to wake up next to a party scene and trash on the floor and transients who they have no idea who live in their quiet little neighborhood, they didn't want that. And so I want to see if there is some sort of middle ground where, well, let me ask you, Scott, through the chair. You know, I understand you guys have already approved this project. I understand the Historic Preservation has already seen it. I also understand that Russell has spent upwards of $1 million in design fees. But, you know, what do you think would be the appetite for Flamingo Park, where the use would be translated to residential, given the fact that there would be like a very minimum parking requirement, maybe 10 or 20%, room size, and you know the caveat would be a little bit higher. I wouldn't say higher than the Publix or the Target, okay, and incentivizing that sort of development. And I would just, through the chair, I would love to hear what you have to say about that.
Yes, in terms of incentivizing market rate development, we've always been on our plate in our discussions with staff. We you know, as far as when we're talking about the 28 feet on Fifth Street, or I'm sorry, fronting 6, we said, well, you know what? An exception to that would be for market rate housing. I'm not saying to go up very high, but maybe to go up to where it's currently allowed now, which, what was it, 50, or I forget, it's 50 or 75. Yeah, even though we're asking for it to come down, there would be that exception for market rate housing, which somebody could do there now anyway. So we do want to incentivize market rate housing. However, on that particular on his plot on Lenox Avenue, I wouldn't want to see that go any higher than it is now. I think that's 7 or 8 stories. But in terms of incentivizing market rate housing, yeah, we're open to a lot of pretty much anything that does that in our discussions with trying to bring this to a conclusion.
Okay, well, look, let
Currently, what's the current height that's approved for that site?
The adjacent property is 75 feet.
The adjacent property, but the property that you own on Lenox and 6?
The approval is for the same height, 75 feet.
75 feet.
Yeah, the approved product.
But and just to check through the chair, just to check the temperature, would you be open to 100 feet? Because that's what we're doing to Washington Avenue, where, we're giving a 25-foot incentive for 0 parking.
Another thing we discussed for a full block developments from 5th Street to 6th Street, we would be okay with higher height limits as long as it's pushed closer to 5th Street. And it's stepping down when it gets to 6th Street. So, but not on like, say, a single lot right on fronting on 6th Street.
If I may, because you're onto something good, Commissioner Suarez. You're onto transitioning a use that we want to be out of the general business of developing more of. You know, we have hotel inventory. Clearly, tourism is an important part of our city, but we don't want to be encouraging more hotel developments. And we want to encourage transitions from transient to non-transient uses. Exempting this property from the overlay, will it allow us to still move forward with the good policies that the Flamingo Park Neighborhood Association has presented to us, while Commissioner Suarez can still work on incentives together with the neighborhood association, where where Scott is not put here, where he hasn't probably spoken with the rest of the neighborhood association, but to develop those incentives.
You gonna co-sponsor with me?
To develop those incentives that could potentially work, that could make sense. Because I don't know if, going from 75 feet to 100 feet makes sense. I don't, for residential. I don't know if the numbers work in that situation. I don't know if the neighbors would favor that. I know the neighbors want to preserve the character of the area. I know the neighbors supported this project. I know that the board that reviewed this project approved this project. But I don't know if the residents who we represent favor something that could be outside of the historic character that has been proposed here.
If I may, you're totally right. We don't know, but from what I've had personal experience in canvassing for a year and living in a neighborhood that had the same exact problem. If you're telling me that where I live, I have to either live next to a hotel or a residential building with just 2 extra floors, and I think that's an easy answer to pull. But I'll let the Flamingo Park Neighborhood Association that, and I'm sure Russell, you through the chair, you have a comment.
Mr. Chair, can I say a comment?
Yes.
I got to tell you, I'm so excited about this conversation. It really has turned me on, and I didn't really know where it was going to go, honestly. I think that what might work here, and I really think it might work, is to postpone this meeting for 1 month and allow Commissioner Suarez to meet with the Neighborhood Association and us and really talk what the neighborhood association would like to see happen. I did not believe I'm even saying this, but I just love a commission that's listening and trying to figure out a way to make our community better, and that's what each of you are doing. And I don't know where it goes. I promise you we could be back here next month in the same place, but I think it might be worth the shot, because I think thinking out of the box is beneficial to everyone.
Thank you. Let me recognize Commissioner Dominguez. Commissioner Dominguez, you're one of the sponsors of this item.
Yes.
And we need you to give us some
So
feedback
for the
on
last
all
year,
of
I've done
these.
just that. I've tried to reach out to both parties, and it's basically coming down to Flamingo Park wants to include them in the overlay. Russell does not want to be included in the overlay. That's the bottom line. That's where the argument is. So my thought is to move this to the full commission as requested by the Flamingo Park Neighborhood Association, so then the two parties can go to the planning board and figure any concessions out there. But I'd like to move the item as is.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Okay, there's a
Mr.
motion.
Chair?
Yes, Mr. Moody?
For clarity purposes, just so that we know what the motion is, it's to move the version of the ordinance with the Flamingo Park Neighborhood Association recommendations on building height, exceptions, and transient uses to the city commission. Or
Exclusive
referral
of-
to the planning board.
Exclusive of my property, right?
Please. If you're not speaking at the moment, please be seated. So, Commissioner Dominguez, you have a motion on the table, hasn't been seconded yet. I would like to second your motion, but I would like to offer the amendment that at the moment, we exclude this parcel from there so that we can allow Commissioner Suarez time to be able to negotiate whatever incentive, because I think ultimately the Flamingo Park Neighborhood Association ultimately doesn't want to see hotel uses. That's the purpose of this overlay. And so to the extent that we want to advance this policy, because it's good policy, I'm able to do that, provided that we make an amendment that we exclude this parcel just west of Michigan Avenue. If you would accept that amendment.
But that's not what.
Your microphone is not on.
That's not what Flamingo Park Neighborhood Association wants, so I would be a no on that.
Okay, all right, so there's a motion on the table to, let me just see, okay, there's a motion on the table to refer this back to the city commission to be referred to the planning board as presented. Is there a second on that motion?
May I speak?
Is it on the motion?
No.
No?
I mean, it's on this item.
Is there a second on that motion? Okay, seeing no second, okay, that motion is laid on the table at the moment. Commissioner Suarez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, I just heard that Russell, the property owner, wants another 30 days, and Scott from Flamingo Park is willing to hopefully work this out. I'm very sensitive to the fact that my colleague, Commissioner Dominguez, has worked on this for a year, but, and by the way, I'm not trying to derail this project, I'm just trying to come up with a solution that both parties seem to be interested in and would possibly both benefit from, and it's a win-win. I don't see the problem in just giving another 30 days to see what kind of solution they come up with and move forward with. And that's a motion to defer for until the next meeting.
Okay, so is that a motion to defer to the September meeting?
Correct.
Continue to the September meeting. Okay. There's a motion to continue to the September meeting. Are we all in favor of that?
Mr. Chair, can I
Yes.
just give one quick
Yes,
thought
Commissioner
before
Magazine.
it's deferred? I know the administration is recommending not excluding hotels, and where I'm at on the commission is if we're going to exclude this property because it's already gotten its approval, I think there would be appetite from our body to exclude hotels on the remainder of the overlay, excluding not to have hotel usages. So, not going fully with the administration's recommendation. So this overlay would not include the possibility for further hotels, excluding the one that's already gotten its land use approvals. That's where I'll vote. I have the sense that some of my colleagues will feel the same, but as we're just kind of going through this process, I just wanted to lay that out there.
Great, thank you. With that, any other discussion on this item?
So I made a motion, I don't know if there was a second.
Yeah, I think by acclamation. On deferral?
No, because I wanted to go to the full commission.
Okay, so we can show that adopted 2-1. And I just want to make sure, Scott, you're okay with continuing this item to the next meeting? Okay, so seeing that, we'll continue this to the September meeting, and let's show that 2-1. Thank you.
Really great commission.
All right, with that, let's go to item number 7. Commissioner Dominguez, this is your item. Mr. Mooney, let's introduce it.
Okay, Mr. Chair, item number 7 is expedite the opening of the Baywalk and move the development of the Baywalk up on the GeoBond prioritization list and present the Baywalk plan to the LUSC committee.
Commissioner Dominguez, this is your item. You're recognized.
Thank you. So David Gomez and I have been working on this for quite some time and trying to keep the projects moving and timelines, and I want to hear what's happening behind the Mondrian.
Good afternoon, Vice Mayor, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. David Gomez, Interim Director for Capital Improvements. We do actually have good news. Aside from a slight weather delay in loading some of the piles, they are scheduled to be on site behind the Mondrian before the end of the week and installing piles. So the construction will commence this week.
Okay. Thank you for the update. We'll keep, how are things going with the other projects, South Bay Club, Southgate?
We have about 75% completion on the basis of design report for the South Bay Club. We've met with Bay Garden Manor and Bayview Terrace. We were waiting for some response from them, and we have actually begun scheduling a second round of meetings with them that'll probably take place in August because everyone's away for the summer. So we anticipate that in the next month or so, we'll have more advancement there. Everything has been positive so far. They haven't objected in any significant way, and we've been able to work through most of their concerns.
And the building that's behind, that's next to Lincoln Road?
That is part of the West Avenue project, and we do have some discussions going on with the 1450 Lincoln Road building. They've asked us to make some changes, and the design builder's looking at what impacts, if any, that'll have on the Durham permit, and they should be getting back to us within the next 30 days.
Okay, please share them.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dominguez.
And this will be moved to September for another update?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Mr. Mooney, going back to the previous item that we heard on the 6th Street overlay, Commissioner Dominguez is the sponsor of that item. I want to make sure that the item only comes back once she is comfortable with what is negotiated by the Neighborhood Association. She is the lead on this item. Commissioner Dominguez has been working on this for a long time. And I want to make sure that is respected as this item is improved and things are solved, especially with the transient uses. So I just want to make sure it comes back once Commissioner Dominguez feels comfortable that it's ready to come back. All right? Is that clear?
Yep.
Thank you. All right, let's introduce item number 9.
Okay, Mr. Chair, item number 9 is an ordinance to modify the height of allowable fencing and shrubbery of oceanfront properties facing the beach walk to improve sightlines for pedestrians. This was a dual referral to the planning board.
Thank you, Mr. Mooney. This is Commissioner Bott's item. I think David Martinez is going to be presenting on this item. Welcome, David. Please tell us the sponsor's intent.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. David Martinez, Interim Assistant City Manager. The concern here that the sponsor had was we had some walkthroughs of the beach walk some time ago, and what we're experiencing is many of the connecting streets and paths that connect to the beach walk from west to east. As you approach the beach walk, there's a lot of landscaping material and other objects, such as fences, that are basically creating or blocking the visibility and sight triangles. Yes, I was saying, the sponsor is concerned with visibility and safety as some of the side streets connect to the beach walk at those locations. So this is an attempt at trying to find if there's a way to modify any of the land development regulations to help in enforcing those visibility triangles and improving safety at connections at beach walk.
Okay. Do you have an official recommendation?
Could I address that?
Yes.
So we've summarized what the regulations are in the current code. What we've recommended is that we get some direction from the sponsor with regard to an actual code amendment. It could be that we may be able to amend a section of the city code in order to try to make this retroactive, because typically if you amend the LDRs, it's only prospective. So I think this is something where we should probably sit down with the sponsor before the next meeting and come up with a strategy that's acceptable to the sponsor.
Okay, so let's continue this item then to the September meeting.
Okay, by
Can we
acclamation.
show that by acclamation?
Yep.
Perfect. All right, so let's introduce item number 11.
Okay, item number 11 is a discussion regarding facilitating pop-ups for local cultural institutions and local startups in vacant retail commercial spaces.
Thank you, Mr. Mooney. This is an item I've sponsored together with Commissioner Bond, who joins me as a co-sponsor, aiming to revitalize, at least on temporary basis, underutilized properties, support artists, and enrich our cultural landscape in our city. My hope was that by partnering with property owners to facilitate pop-ups, we could try to transform some of these empty storefronts that sometimes proliferate through some of our main corridors, turn them into more dynamic hubs of activity. You know, these pop-ups, you know, they drive foot traffic, they bring excitement, especially when it happens during times like during Art Week and that type of stuff. And so I want to recognize Lisette Arrogante, who joins us today to talk to us about this concept I put on the agenda and the potentials that we have to do this. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and committee members. Lisa Arrogante, Director of Tourism and Culture. As the memo states, we have, the city has entertained a program similar to this called Open House Miami Beach. In your memo, we shared, while this is a very feel-good type of program, it does come with its challenges. And a success of a program like this is dependent on the property owner engagement. So artists are very excited at any opportunity to be able to have a space to showcase their work. So that was always something that came very easy. The difficulties is with the property owners. With the Open House Miami Beach program, the city incentivized artists with up to $2,500 to activate a pop-up for about 90 days. However, the property owners were not incentivized at that time. The program eventually had to be discontinued. You know, they had, this is prior to my appointment, but they had signed up about 70 artists. Maybe less than half of those were actually placed in spaces. And so before you.
So let me just understand, I'm sorry.
Sure.
So with Open House Miami Beach, we had incentives for the artists, but it was hard to get the property owners engaged because we weren't offering anything to the property owners.
Exactly.
And I would imagine clearly $2,500 for an artist is not sufficient to get a space or fill one of these spaces temporarily.
Correct, because with the pop-up permit, they need to have insurance. The insurance is going to be, was coming about to be $1,000 plus for the artist. So whatever was left over was what they would use then to activate the space.
So that's what we learned from the past program. So do we have an idea of or possibility to encourage or take advantage of any funding or any incentives we may currently have available to perhaps, if we bring back something like this on a temporary basis, to perhaps make it more successful than last time?
We currently do not have any funding through the Tourism and Culture Department. There is currently through the Economic Development Department, and our colleague from Economic Development is here to discuss possibly the using of the Commercial Lease Subsidy Program. That is intended more for long-term lease, not for a pop-up permit, and it's specific to the MXC ADCD district.
Okay, and I see we have Heather Shaw from our Economic Development Department present. Welcome, Heather. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, actually,
Evening.
it should be evening. As my colleagues stated, Heather Shaw, Interim Director, Economic Development. As my colleague stated, we have funding for the Commercial Lease Subsidy Program, which has just launched this year, and we're still, promoting that. We do have funding for that, but that's a totally different program than the pop-up. The pop-up is very temporary in nature.
Sure.
And this is supposed to, the CLS, or commercially subsidy, is supposed to attract long-term tenants. So they have a tenancy and they stay for a year. This is a program that is supposed to be over 3 years where we're giving incentives.
How much interest have we received in the commercial lease subsidy program?
So the program has been up and running for about 3 months, and it took us some time, and we're still promoting it, and we have at least one applicant so far. But again, it takes a lot of hitting the pavement and talking with landlords, which is, I think, the bigger issue that we're talking about for even activating the area is really having a real meaningful and constructive conversation with the landlords. Because even with what Lisette was saying about the open house, a lot of it had to do with the cost of the tenancy, even the short-term 3-month tenancy. The artists themselves have had difficulty, paying the rent and paying the utilities, as well as the fit out of the activation to bring people in, even during, if we do it during Art Week, or even some times of the year where we have a lot of foot traffic.
Right.
So it really has to be a true conversation for the pop-ups to succeed, with the landlords to really work with making that happen and kind of working on the cost of doing that.
Okay. Does the administration have any recommendation? Because I do feel that we do have, and by the way, thank you for the update on the commercial lease subsidy. I know I recall when we brought this forward, I was the sponsor of this item, and I worked with our interim city manager when she was director of the department at the time on that. And I'm glad to see that in its early stages, there's some interest. Because the idea is to transition nuisance uses into good uses in our city. Notwithstanding that, a vacant storefront can at times be worse than a nuisance use. A nuisance use, you have some economic activity happening, you have activity. There's nothing worse than dead activity, than no activity, than an empty storefront, than no lights on. That is the worst activity. And if we could figure out a way, especially during those times of the year when we have high foot traffic, during season, or during Art Week, when we have so much activity, to support our art scene and continue our direction of being an arts and culture community, and be a place for artists to be able to succeed, local artists be able to succeed. We could find a model that could potentially work. It'd be very exciting. If, I don't know, Lisette and Heather, if you guys could work together in bringing back a proposal, seeing perhaps how we could use, if we need to make an amendment to the commercial lease subsidy program, I'm willing to do that, or see if there's other alternatives that are available out there to help advance a project like this.
Thank you, Commissioner. I also want to add that there currently is no funding to incentivize the artists. So even if you were to amend that program, we still will need to find funding to incentivize the artists or nonprofit organizations.
And previously, how many artists did we have interested?
About 70. I would not recommend that. I've done this in the past successfully. I would start first with maybe 8 and see, and kind of work from there. But something that's small, that's achievable. 70 artists that was proposed before was too much for the city.
And what year? And what year was that proposed?
It started in 2020.
In 2020, so during, during the pandemic.
Yeah, this is something, creative placemaking that was used throughout the nation to deal with blight from COVID.
Great. And this is something I think, especially in North Beach, a lot of times, when we think about arts and culture, especially during our high season and during exciting times like Art Week and Art Basel, we focus so much on the activity happening in South Beach or in the activity happening in some of our larger hotels. But we forget also about North Beach. And we want to drive some of this excitement and support the arts scene up in North Beach as well. And so I would love for us to see how we could, restart this program in a more modest way than what was proposed previously. Not just focus on South Beach, but focus how we can, support this, citywide, including in North Beach. How much time would you all need to put something together to bring back for our consideration?
Any thoughts?
I really think that we have to have some meaningful conversations with the landlords because it's very, very, that to me is the linchpin of the success or not, is that they have to, because the rent is what keeps this from being a successful thing. So, I mean, honestly.
6 months?
Yeah, that would be good. That would be good, and hopefully they will, we can have some meetings of the mind to understand that is it's absolutely what you just said. It's a change maker. It could be a complete change maker. And it's happened in other areas where, rents were, abated and given a pass for a few months, and that helps to make something happen. It brings people there.
I want you guys to get this concept. I want you guys to feel at liberty to put together something that you feel could be successful, that can help areas, that can help bring excitement back into areas, pedestrian activity, that can help local artists as well. And not us doing it in a vacuum as a government, but as you all mentioned, in conversation with the property owners. That's key to it. But I just don't want it to be us in conversations with the property owners. Sometimes property owners own large amount of property. If us doing this helps them transition nuisance uses to non-nuisance uses, if they commit to, okay, the city's gonna help us with this pop-up, but then we commit to filling some other vacancies. We should use this as an incentive. We'll come in, we'll help an artist, come into one of your properties, but you have to, help your own properties as well.
I agree.
All right. So in 6 months, let's show this. Actually, before we do that, let me, are there members of the public that wish to be heard on this item? Seeing none on Zoom, I see Elizabeth Latone has her hand raised. Welcome, Elizabeth. You're recognized.
Hi, how are you?
Welcome.
I'm actually on the road leaving Georgia. I love this idea. I'd like to understand, like Lisette was saying, I think it's very important that we probably need to set a budget because the rent is extremely high in a lot of areas. North Beach definitely needs some love. And I know that landlords can be difficult, but this is a great opportunity, and I'd like to see this happen.
Wonderful. Thank you, Elizabeth. Any other members of the public wishing to be heard on this item? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public opportunity to be heard. Are there comments from the dais? Seeing no comments from the dais, we'll come back to this item in 6 months.
Thank you.
And, Mr. Chair, just for clarity purposes, November 25th is the last scheduled meeting, so I'll go ahead and continue it to that date, if that's okay, November 25th?
Let's give it then till January.
January? Okay. Well,
Yes.
January of 2025.
Thank you.
Thank you. What I'm going to do, item number 15, I feel is probably going to be a long item. So I almost feel that item 15 almost, we should probably have a lighter agenda the day that we reschedule this item on 41st Street. And have Commissioner Bott here as well. But let's proceed to item number 16.
Okay.
And we will be ending with item number 16.
And so item number 15, we're going to just defer to a future date? Yes. Okay.
Please.
Okay, item number 16. This is a resolution of the Mayor and City Commission of the City of Miami Beach, Florida, directing the city administration to explore feasible strategies for creating and expanding green roofs, as well as incorporating greenery and landscaping on city buildings, and present its findings to the Land Use and Sustainability Committee and the Finance and Economic Resiliency Committee within 90 days of the adoption of this resolution.
Commissioner Magazine, is this your item? You're welcome to present.
It is. Thank you so much. You know, I don't want to overcomplicate this. I think this has a multitude of benefits. One is the cooling of our city as we undertake hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in infrastructure projects as a result of climate change and resiliency. Green roofs, green landscaping is a way to naturally cool our city. And then from a more selfish perspective, the aesthetics of our city. I live in a condo and look down at many rooftops, and there is a notable difference between the ones that have some sort of green landscaping on the top and ones that are just outdated. So the aesthetics of our city could be vastly improved. I would love to incorporate this on a broader scale where it's in private development. I actually got this idea when I was watching several of our land use boards, in particular the Design Review Board, and they brought it up as an idea, but there's really no oomph or meat behind having property owners do so. While we're not there yet, imposing this on private property owners, I think a great start would be leading by example and looking at ways to incorporate this in city buildings. I'll hand it over to Liz, our director of, actually I won't do anything. I will leave that to my chair.
Welcome, Liz.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, committee members. Last but not least, okay, here we go, green roofs and also living walls. So we looked at a couple of city facilities where we could possibly include the green roofs, but it's best, obviously, to try to look at this when we're developing projects. So we've given you 3 proposed buildings where we could possibly potentially do this, as well as some potential projects where they're still under development and we can consider using these as, you know, incorporating the green roofs there. So for city buildings, we've looked at the Facilities and Fleet Management Department. No better example. The 77 building or the 1701 building. We've also looked at the Scott Rakow. They have large surface areas for their roofs, and we can potentially use a portion of that roof to create green roofs. Okay. For living walls, we also looked at the 77 building. Now, in terms of actual projects that are currently in the design phase, it is a good opportunity to look at incorporating that because we're looking at loads, we're looking at irrigation, and so we can build that as part of the design. Okay, and so with that, we've looked at the Art Deco Welcome Center expansion. In addition, the Bass Museum, the Botanical Garden, the Byron Carlisle, and Flamingo Youth Center, as well as the Ocean Rescue Nobi facility. So we've given you a couple of options here. We currently do not have a cost of what this will look like because the unit cost based on industry standard is something like $120 a square foot if you're looking at green roofs and $160 a square foot if you're looking at living walls. So this is just for your consideration. I know we'll be looking at this as well in our Finance and Economic Resiliency Committee.
Thank you. And through the chair, back of the envelope estimate on what the square footage of the roof at, let's call it Baptist Health, Tom, on 6th and Alton, because they have a beautiful green roof facility. Is that 2,000 square feet?
That's a pretty large project. That's multiple lots. I believe that that's 6 lots. I would say that that's probably in excess of 8,000 to 10,000 square feet.
Excellent, thank you.
Commissioner Suarez. Just to get a better sense from my colleague, Commissioner Magazine, I don't know if this was for aesthetics reasons or natural preserve reasons, but if it's for aesthetics, perhaps we can make it simple and do like a turf. Because if you're in a condo, because you know, I've seen on a condo, you look down and some of these roofs are, you know, they're just tar roofs with tar tiles. You know, maybe make a requirement that, you know, any new development has to have like a green turf roof I think, you know, that would be a lot cheaper than $120 a square foot for a real roof, which is gonna require landscaping and, you know, I don't know what you wanna do on there, like put some cows or chickens, make a little farm on there, but it certainly doesn't seem like the juice is worth the squeeze. But I think if it's from an aesthetic point of view, I think just a turf roof, it really makes a huge difference as aesthetically from a high-rise perspective.
So let me just understand a little bit better, because when we speak about green roofs, I know we have a resolution that was adopted by the city commission, I believe, when was it, in 2019?
That was in 2019, yes.
And that was our urban heat island policy.
Correct. And it looks at, you know, incorporating sustainable roofs, whether these are solar roofs, white roofs, green roofs, blue roofs. These are all materials that will be reflective, so you don't have that heat being absorbed by the buildings.
So that, because that's the point, you know, the idea is to help reduce the heat island effect.
Correct.
That is the point. And so I'm not sure if we necessarily achieved the same by displacing turf. And I don't know, guide me on that, please.
So it does have those benefits. However, we have also done some projects where we've changed out, like for instance, when we did the roof at the Fillmore, at the Miami Beach City Ballet, we changed those out to white roofs. So, you know, we have options where we can basically do the same in terms of, you know, lowering the heat index.
And if I could, Mr. Chair, Liz, I don't know if you, and I apologize on behalf of my colleague at the end down there, Mr. Chairman, the multitude of benefits was explained when they were engaged in sidebar banter, so, you know. But anyway, I don't know if you know specifically, but the Community Health Center on 7th Street, they placed a white roof probably within the last 3 months, and the deteriorating condition has been so rapid. I've been in shock. I don't know if that is a symptom of that in general, or if it's a one-off. You know, when I was thinking green roofs, it was to the chairman's point of not just from an aesthetics purpose, but also in emissions, kind of cooling of the city. If you look on West Avenue, Monad Terrace, where they have kind of the green living walls, it just really, really stands out from the rest of the city. And while I wouldn't be comfortable imposing this on the private sector yet, I do think it would be a good litmus test to see if we could do so with a couple of selected city buildings. You know, I even look at kind of the architecture here in City Hall. I'm like, wow, imagine if we would incorporate some sort of greenery on the side when I'm looking across the city, the convention center, hotels, something along those lines.
If I may, so just to be clear, Commissioner Magazine, would it be a natural green roof or a turf green roof? I mean,
Well, I was thinking natural for the multitude of benefits, right? So, but this isn't an area where I'm an expert in. Perhaps, you know, we could also involve Amy from the environmental, Amy Knowles from the environmental department. Because like I said, I wanted to really kill several birds with one stone here, not just use this solely for aesthetics or solely for emissions, but if we could do achieve a few of those goals, I think that's the needle I was trying to thread.
yeah, that, and just back of the envelope, I think when you mentioned the excess of 10,000, that's $1.2 million roof. I mean, yeah.
And that's
Well,
why-
and that's fine. I mean, if we can get better pricing than $120 a square foot, you know.
Yes, certainly, we can do a cost analysis, and that's why when we propose the city buildings, we've only looked at a portion of them. Like, for instance, there's some of them, they're very big, like the Scott Rakeout's over 8,000 square feet. So we want to look at a portion and, you know, perhaps do that as a pilot even.
So where do we go from here?
Finance, because it's do a referral.
Well, Let's hear it at finance, because I do think that we have to have some sort of cost associated with it, and maybe we can kind of hone in on some of the recommendations. I'm not sure if there's the appetite to sit here and go through these one-on-one, but maybe we could all kind of review, bring this back maybe in 3 months, and sit there and look at the projects that would provide the most amount of excitement of the multitude of options they've provided, and we can get some sort of financial estimate as well, if that would be okay with the chair.
Yeah, that's fine. I think, you know, we shouldn't only be looking at installation costs for something like this, but potential recurring costs that could potentially occur with this. We should also be seeing whether these green roofs increase the lifespan of a roof, and whether it reduces any longer term building operational costs. I think there's, you know, other things that I think, you know, can be more properly vetted at the finance committee. Certainly, there is lots of benefits to this, and I think in general, you know, we probably are all supportive of what's being presented here. I think we just need to, you know, look at a little bit better at some of the other
And
details.
just to clarify one thing, I'm sorry, I misspoke. So the Scalrigo has actually 47,000 square feet of roof. That's huge.
It is huge, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Did you want this to come back in 3 months to land use for an update?
Yes, so that'll give us time to look at it in finance, and I love
See
the
what's
idea,
feasible.
but if it's 50,000 square feet times $100 per square feet, obviously it's something that may not be feasible, but we can,
You know,
we'll
they've put forward other options, you know, facilities, building, the 777 building, you know, 777 building was, what was it, 3,700 square feet?
Correct.
The facilities building is
It's
8,000 square
8,000
feet.
square feet. Mhm.
And so there's other more modest options that, you know, we can test, that once you have your discussion at finance, we can bring back and see what we have budget for and go forward based on that.
Yeah, and Liz, can I ask just one quick final question, and I'll let everybody get out of here? That cost of $120 per square foot, if a roof needed a new replacement, would that be the add-on incremental cost? Or are we saying, well, part of the reason why it's so expensive is we're essentially going out and replicating a new roof. If we're doing new construction, is it going to be $120 of incremental cost? Or maybe are we only looking at $40 because a new roof would be 80? If you use a green roof, it's 120, so really that incremental cost would just be 40, using, you know, fake numbers, but.
Right. I would have to look into that
Okay.
to give you a precise answer, just because I know there's other systems that we want to integrate there, like irrigation for a green roof. So there may be other hidden costs.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay?
So by acclamation, this will go to the October 10th meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Colleagues, I want to thank you all for your hard work, for your dedication, for your commitment in this meeting. And I especially, once again, want to end by commending the years of dedication and public service that Joe Gomez dedicated to our city as a public works director. And certainly it's been a privilege to serve our public along his side here at City Hall. Thank you all for your service, and we'll have our next meeting in September. We stand adjourned. Thank you.